tired of women.
That's no good. This
Clap for that, you stupid bastard.
The front basket.
My father's cock explodes, splattering alone. Semen drops are dripping from his shoulder, having sex in the commode. Lick the cum shot, sure to make the details drop. Sex in the bathroom, y'all, you knock on the marker. Chisholm rage, drenching, quenching the thirst of me and my mom. That five-sided penis gone. I'm having sex with my mom and fucking dad, Will Wiggers. My father's joke edges and hurt. Sex with my whole family. My penis fucking smells. I'm sex with my whole family. My penis fucking smells.
Hi. I had to play it. I absolutely had to.
What?
Because the word five-sided penis gone has become my favorite thing on the fucking planet.
Five-sided penis gone.
And I figured it's a pretty good way to kick off the 4th of July.
4th of July
weekend with the real lyrics that were too political for the song. Bulls on Parade.
You may notice that something looks a little weird on screen. There's two of Jordan.
Yes.
We're gonna be having Steve on in just a second.
Yes.
And we used 4 camera angles,
yep.
So we're just gonna leave it at that.
Yep. So I figure we can let Steve in here and we can start off these 4th of July.
I think. Are we gonna do any kind of preamble then?
Nah, I mean.
All right.
I realized when we started this, I had nothing to say.
Well, I mean, there are some topical things that. I mean, the world's opening back up. Literally, there's an open hole to hell.
Yeah, that is pretty fucking wild.
That when I asked for the world to open back up, I don't think this is what I meant.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw that Florida building collapse, I thought that was the end of the world, and then I saw this video, and I'm like, oh dear God.
It's a pipeline burst.
Yeah.
The ocean is on fire.
Yes.
That's a direct portal to hell.
It is. Yep.
Incredible.
It's a good way to kick off the weekend.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I know. I'm super excited to see what comes of this.
Me too.
I saw a tweet from Caleb Huron, I think is his name.
Oh, yeah.
And he was like, you know what? I've just started telling myself that things aren't real,
mm-hmm.
and I feel so much better. And so he said, like, I saw that picture. I saw the video of the hole in the ocean, and I just convinced myself it was Photoshop, and I've been happy ever since.
Yeah.
Just don't think about it.
Well, I mean, like,
it's
what's so
real.
funny about that whole video is it's like, again, like our responsibility to, like, not drive a gas guzzling car or recycle or whatever, and it's like, oops, I forgot to put that plastic bottle in the trash can, and now
looks like I
caused
summoned Gorthalax.
Yes. So anyway, got anything else? Or?
No, I think that's it. I just wanted to say hello,
okay.
And we're gonna have our guest on.
Further ado, here is Steve. Let me unmute Steve, and then let me switch the cameras around here.
We've got a lot of things.
I know.
Here.
I like to, I'm trying to do it all on the fly.
There we go.
And then let me move his little thing right here.
All right.
So this is our good friend Steve Cox, who's running for Congress in California's 39th district.
Don't mind me, I'm looking down because I'm looking something up, but keep going.
Oh yeah, no worries. And also our fellow shit poster in chief. We're going to talk about a lot of things, including him kicking the most brain dead people on the planet's hive, the K hive, and a handful of other things. But we have this 4th of July weekend that is upon us, and we wanted to discuss the U.S. flag code.
Yeah. So that's what I was looking up because I wanted to get the exact words for it.
Mm-hmm.
It just always gets me on 4th of July because it seems like, and this is kind of like a microcosm, I think, of the entire country.
Yeah.
like the problems that we face and how backwards so many people see things. Which I think are, it's like the center of our what we have to deal with,
yes.
Our problems. But yeah, the flag code, the thing about it, there's the U.S. flag code has it's actually very clear. So I'm going to read this so that you guys can hear it or understand it for yourself. First off, to understand what the U.S. flag code, now this was a law that was passed like 100 years ago. and it's no longer law. Mainly, I think it got thrown out of court because or got thrown out because the Supreme Court said it violated, rights, like you should be able to do these things because it was actually a law.
Mm-hmm.
But people are still, patriots for the longest time until about 9/11, 2001. Up until then, people still mostly went by this flag code as a rule, this is how you show respect for the flag, is you do these things, you treat it this way, whatever. So I was taught it because my dad was is a Marine. That's how they refer to it. Mm-hmm. And, so he raised me knowing all this stuff because he would have got his butt kicked in the Marines if he wouldn't have followed this thing. So, but here's the thing. On the 4th of July, how many people are wearing flags on their person, meaning like their actual clothing? Looks like a flag.
The American flag hats that are made in China, all these kinds of things.
Yeah, but it doesn't even matter where it's made. Because here's the thing. So according to the U.S.
It's more just irony to me. Is the point.
But this is where it gets worse. Mm-hmm. According to U.S. flag code, the words flag, standard, colors, or ensign, as used herein, meaning within the flag code, shall include any flag, standard, colors, or ensign, or any picture or representation of either, or of any part or parts of either, made of any substance or represented on any substance of any evidently purporting of any size evidently purporting to be either of said flag, standard, colors, or ensign of the United States of America, or a picture or a representation of either, upon which shall be shown the colors, the stars, and the stripes in any number of either thereof, or of any parts of either, by which the average person seeing the same without deliberation may believe the same to represent the flags, colors, standard, or ensign of the United States of America. So essentially, if it's made to look like the flag, it is the flag, according to the U.S. flag code.
Okay.
That's that's a very long-winded way of thanks for bearing with me. But the point is I wanted to show how thorough they were about pointing out that this is what we consider the flag.
Sure.
Now, Rule D of the first section of the U.S. flag code is the flag should never be used as wearing apparel, bedding, or drapery. It should never be festooned, drawn back, nor up in folds, but always allowed to fall free. Bunting of blue, red, and white, always arranged with the blue above, the white in the middle, and the red below, should be used for covering speakers, lecterns. So, but they're saying that like never ever do you ever wear the flag as clothing, mm-hmm. because and the reasoning for that makes sense if you understand the sort of this sort of idolatry of the flag. Like they want to keep the flag as this special thing.
Sure.
Because you sweat on it. If the flag is your clothes, like you have the flag printed across your chest in any way, shape, or form, or whatever, and you sweat on it, or you roll in the dirt, or you get just get dirty because you're out of a dirty area, whatever. You have now soiled the flag, right? And that's disrespectful to the flag. But how many people who are up in arms about Colin Kaepernick and all this other stuff walk around wearing the goddamn flag like it's clothing all the time? And I'm like, if you don't respect the flag enough to, like that's insane. You don't have any respect for the flag, so how can you expect other people to have any respect for it, or how can you ask them to?
Sure.
Right? These people don't see it that way, but that is the reality of it, I think.
Right. Well, I mean, it's actually like what's made it kind of difficult for us to even do this show at this point, because when we and this will come back to it, but we knew that this, inevitable administration was coming, and we just knew that it would be Trump's policies, but they smile and they just lie about it. And like almost
you put women in or gays or whoever in
charge,
whoever,
but surprise, surprise, women, black people, gays can be terrible people too.
Oh, is that right?
That's right. Yeah, no, believe it or not.
There's a wrench in the plan.
Exactly. We're not immaculate in any kind of way.
Yeah.
So.
Jordan, I think you may have bumped me. I can't really hear a whole lot. There we go.
I can hear you.
There we go.
Yeah, it's in his head. My
Yeah.
USB interface is messing with me. But anyway, so like what's also made it just so ridiculous and like also hard to talk about is we also were shitting on the people that we knew were going to just entrench themselves deeper into their partisan politics, where like Trump was like from a policy level basically 90s Bill Clinton. He was just loud about it and annoying. And then Joe Biden literally has demonstrated that he has the exact same policies and can't get out of his own way to really be much of a populist because he is so entrenched in politics for 95,000 years that he just has to placate Republicans at every turn because he is one. So what the inevitable outcome of that is I think that, out of a country of 330 million people, I would, very generously say about 300 million of them are effectively retarded. And the idea is that eventually, like, people that are, well, I'll be kind, simple, simple people with simple things. And so the thing is like, if these kinds of people that have let politics rot their brain, I blame the internet politics, clickbait stuff, and also the 24-hour news cycle, they get more and more entrenched into their own ideology. So if their leader, even though these two people, Joe Biden and Trump, do not give a shit about you, but if they say this good or this bad, then they go, this is good, this is bad. And so it's absolutely just so predictable that people would act this way. And so I'm at a point of like, I went from like anger at these people, whether it be like people that I rally against on either side, to just kind of apathy, because I felt like there was some semblance of some fundamental change that could possibly happen, and I've just totally surrendered on it. And so which, I mean, that's not even a recent development. I mean, even after I think the first interview we did with you like over a year and a half ago at this point, like I already felt that way, but I just sort of thought, I thought that like if Trump had won a second term, it was possible that his saying the quiet part out loud and his absolute bombast could be something that would, maybe convince people to start to see that the elites are very good at making everything our fault. You know what I mean? Opposed to like them being the ones that cause the problems, and then they just get us to fight with each other over Colin Kaepernick, which
well, that's it's a divide and conquer, or divide and rule. It's thousands of years old, that tactic.
Yes.
To just keep everybody fighting each other so that the rulers can do what they want.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And like, I don't have any problem with what Colin Kaepernick did, but it's like when you see Nike getting behind him, it kind of does make you raise your eyebrow of like, okay, well, this seems to be like a corporate sort of advantageous thing for them to get behind, because the anti-Trump fervor was so intense, it would get anti-Trump people to buy Nikes. And then conversely, like this kind of faux patriotism is just always been lame to me. I mean, even doing the Pledge of Allegiance in school was creepy and cult-like to me.
I mean, put it like this. The thin blue line flag that all these dipshits, fly with the, to support cops. Mm-hmm. When it's on an American flag and it's just a blue line in the middle, that's also a violation of flag code. Who the hell says that you can go and modify the United States flag as like marketing for your job type or whatever? Like it's the dumbest shit, but they do it, right? Like people just like, oh, thin blue line.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's really hard to deal with. But on the Kaepernick thing, one thing that always made me laugh about that is I had a couple of friends that were like, I'm never buying Nike again, whatever. And then I also had friends that were like, about time, about time, but, because that was about the fact that there was a shoe that they were going to put out that had the, I think it was the original, like the Betsy Ross flag on it or something like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then Kaepernick said, like raised a fuss over it, and then Nike said they weren't putting it out or whatever, something like that. But the thing about it that made me laugh is that, because Kaepernick's reasoning was that it was because, that was a slave, flag, like, slave owners were under that flag, which, okay. But every single pair of Reeboks has the British flag on it, and that thing, I mean, every single pair has a little British flag on it, and that flag was the flag that we had before we had ours, and we already had slaves. So like that, the British are also part of this whole thing, but nobody seems to mention it for whatever reason. I'm like, so what? Everybody's on one side or the other about Nike, but what about Reebok?
Right. Well, it's like it's that thing of like any like I've not really seen a controversy. We'll even go back to Kaepernick, but even before that isn't really there to generate capital for someone. You know what I mean? And like, right. And whether that be social capital, but that always ends up leading to money. It's somehow, if you become a person, whether or not it's like a troll that gets a bunch of clicks, you get money. You know,
Capitalism.
I mean, baby, fuck yeah. You know, and so like at this point, it's like whenever like I used to kind of I used to feel like I would disagree or agree with, you know, Kaepernick. I never really felt anything about, but it's like, you know, certain controversies that happened, they just started to. I feel like there was like a glitch in the matrix where none of them felt organic. It was just like, oh, this is being ginned up by, you know, the like, you know, the whole like elite complex, and this goes anywhere from like corporations and the government are just, I mean, and then, you know, social media has a vested interest in which party they want to win. And so like, it's just is like, well, then they're going to promote whatever controversy makes the other side look worse. And then, you know, I don't know, the My Pillow guy will, I don't know, make another pillow or whatever the fuck he, you know, whatever he wants to do. And it's just made this like sort of utter sense of apathy where it's like, oh shit, like, and like even after Biden won, these brain dead fucking liberals don't see themselves as stupid as the fucking QAnon people.
No, but that's the best part is that both sides are so dumb and they're also so sure of themselves.
Right. Isn't that and like that's honestly, dude, I mean, it's like as I got older, I mean, certainty is the enemy of wisdom. I mean,
of course.
Big time.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like I started to really...
I'm only certain about certain things when, like, because people accuse me of that a lot, that I won't never change my mind. I'm like, no, I change my mind all the time. But the thing is when somebody approaches you online and they're like giving you an argument you've already heard, you know, 100 times, and you already know that it's defeated, that doesn't mean that you're stuck in what you believe. That means that you already eliminated what they believe.
Yes.
Before they came across you, you know, so...
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously, like the quote that I like about that, I don't know whose it is, but it ain't mine, is as the area of our knowledge increases, so too does the circumference of our ignorance.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I think that's fine. That spells it out.
It's just it's and this will get us into our K-Hive thing, but it's just this absolute hive mind, and also too how like Nike and Kaepernick and whatever, it's like if you don't buy Nikes, that becomes your fashion, and if you buy Nikes, it's your fashion. And so like how this Andrew Breitbart said this, believe it or not, that politics are downwind from culture, and he was right, and like how now these two things are so inextricably linked that it's now politics have invaded every aspect of our life, and this hasn't always been true. I mean, it's like, like, you know, I remember like Obama, the whole world was just kind of asleep, you know, and you know that allowed him to do whatever horrible shit he did, but at the same time, it was like it didn't, you know, I feel like, you know, you watch a movie, we watched that movie Tenet last night, for example, and that movie Tenet, the Christopher Nolan movie. The new
I don't
one.
even know what it is.
It doesn't matter, but it was interesting. I didn't mention it to you, Sean, but I was thinking, so they have this female protagonist who's like the love interest of the main character, and she is you know, kind of powerful in the way she speaks, but ultimately she gets the shit beat out of her for like most of the movie, essentially, right? And it contextually,
does she deserve it at least?
No, it's by like the villain, but like contextually it makes sense. But then one of the arms dealers the main character deals with turns out to be like this girl boss type woman, and I'm like, they did that so they wouldn't get criticism about having the main female protagonist get the shit beat out of her the whole movie. You know what I mean?
Right. Because it was essentially a woman doing it.
Yes, exactly. And so it was, or ordering it to be done or anything. I mean, it was just,
exactly.
It was so, and I didn't care. It wasn't distracting like a lot of these things end up being. But at the same time, you're just like you can't consume, or there's like nothing really available that doesn't have some sort of political message behind it. And what sucks is that things that are good on a progressive standpoint ends up being like they can't get out of their own way. It's like, and like they don't realize they're being manipulated by like corporate Democrats in order to believe in this kind of woke shit. And I hate that word. And I'm looking desperately for a new word.
Then woke?
Then woke.
Yeah.
It's just,
so tired.
I'm just tired, and it's kind of lame. But I don't have a better word to like just.
I don't think I've ever even typed that word.
I know. Like basically, like
I just don't care.
It's just corporate. It's a corporate pandering for, you know, for profit, essentially, is the idea.
Yeah.
And like woke to me is like sort of, it's just tied with capitalism, but it really, you know, the K-Hive is a perfect example of this just utter fucking brainworms. I also don't think is organic, by the way, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Oh, no, it's not. It's definitely not organic. But, you know, I think that we have a bit of a, like, not a bit of, but we have a mental health crisis in our country, and a lot of people are searching for, something to make them feel the way they want to feel, whatever that feeling is, and sort of being part of a team or whatever. That's a desirable thing for a lot of people, I think. So principles sort of go out the window when that happens, when people are worried more about fitting in than they are about what they believe or whatever. So and online, the problem with online is, even if people start out genuine and wanting to talk about things in a good way, like in good faith and things like that, it doesn't last, because as soon as you disagree with somebody about something online, then they start like reacting to the idea that there's an audience, right? So do they look stupid if they say, oh yeah, that's a good point, or whatever, and depending on whose page it's on or whatever, like whatever their ideology is, like you can't talk sense to people when they're like sort of, they view themselves as being watched by their team, by this team, that we're talking about, the group that they belong to. And so that team, is going to, they view that as, they imagine those people are watching them. So like they got to stand by their guns, and they earn, some sort of social credit or something by doing that, and it's so stupid. Like the whole thing is just really, really dumb. And this K-Hive thing, like, honestly, I don't even remember where. All I know is the Democrats mainly. I don't know who all voted for it, but making Juneteenth a holiday, a federal holiday, which, yeah, that's fine. Like, I got no problem with it. But I made a post that was basically saying that, because this is how our government works, and especially how the Democratic Party works, which is they force people to beg and plead and scratch and fight to get their attention at all, and then they turn and they'll give you just this little symbolic something, but as long as it doesn't cost them or their donors anything, like they're able to do that stuff for people, right, and then they do this afterward. They do like a PR campaign to try and show how this is moving some needle somewhere, that it's not moving. Right. But like, this is the MO of that party specifically. Like, that's the 1994 assault weapons ban, along with the crime bill, but mainly the assault weapons ban, where they designated mainly rifles by their aesthetic characteristics. Yes. And then ban them, even though at the time, even they accounted for, all rifles accounted for like 1.5% of gun crime. Yeah. At the time. And it's like, and then they just paraded it around. Like, look what we did for you guys, everybody. How about it? Huh? Yeah. Like, look what we did. And the thing is like, and this is how how you know the jig is up, or how how they think about this stuff, and that it's a total scam, which is that they put in that bill, speaking specifically about that bill, they put a 10-year sunset provision in it so that it would expire in 2004. And that was basically them just trying to hedge their bets that things would be doing better or something. And then they would be able to sell the public on the Democrats having to be in power to make sure that thing got redone, reinitiated or whatever, continued on. So that was purely like their whole motive for putting a 10-year sunset provision on that was to make sure that they still had power or could get it back in 10 years. It was a political move. Now, if you really think that those weapons are dangerous and that they cause this existential threat to the public and all the things that they talked about at the time, it's fucking irresponsible to put a sunset provision in the bill. Like, you would just leave the bill, right? Like that, like you want to be like, good job, everybody. We got it done. We're going to save all these lives or whatever. Yeah. Right. But I don't even think they really believe it, because if they did believe that the guns would, that banning those guns would save anybody's life, statistically, then they wouldn't have put the sunset provision in the first place, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and so that's the thing, is it's all a game. And you know, these K-Hive people, a lot of them are hired and stuff anyway.
Yeah.
Like these are people, they get paid by either Democratic Party affiliates or, you know, these, whatever they are, think tanks or whatever, like Correct the Record and
like Americans for Progress or whatever.
Yeah. Centers for American Progress.
That one, yes, yeah.
All that sort of shit. So like, you know, they're getting paid to just be annoying shitbags online, and
they get boosted by bots. They've proven that as well.
Yeah. So you know, I just have, you know, I've said this before, but like since this pandemic started, I have a lot more patience for people I see in public, you know, at the grocery store or whatever. Like I'm in much less of a hurry, and I'm, you know, much more patient with people. And online, it's the opposite. I'm I'm over it. Like these people come at me, and I'm just like, get the fuck out of here, man. I'm not gonna deal with this shit. Like, and because you know, like by their line of questions, usually if there's a genuine debate or something starting with people, they'll ask a certain number of questions, and I'll answer them. Almost always, I'll answer them if I see them. But then the follow up to that tells you where they're going, right?
Sure.
The follow up is like, do they go, oh, that's an interesting point, I really would, or do they like completely dismiss or not even address that and then move the goalpost to try and attack you somewhere else? And if they do that shit, I'm like, yeah, you're out of here. I don't care.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's difficult to, you know, because like, you know, especially over the last 5 years or so, it's, you know, if I'm in person with a real life person that seems to have genuinely good intentions, you know, they could believe every single ounce of the opposite viewpoint as I do. Because what I've found is like generally they want the things that I view as good in the end. They just have different ideas on how to get there, and then some deviations from that plan. You know what I mean? But
In most cases, that's true.
In most cases, you know, and so, you know, like our both of our families are pretty politically divided, and ultimately what it comes down to, and politics come up, and we start to, you know, people start to bicker, is like, well, this is all we have is our family. So how about like none of this shit matters? It's all theater, you know?
Right.
This doesn't like
it's bad theater too. It's not even like good
you know,
theater.
it's not. It's actually really fucking boring. It's the worst movie of all time, and like that's ultimately.
I'm trying to explain theater to a couple of gay dudes.
Yeah, exactly. No. Which I think actually, believe it or not, like our ability to sort of navigate that is what's made it. Like, you know, my mother, for example, she's, you know, Democrat, and QAnon is like just this existential crisis in her head, and it's like because every article she reads gets suggested about how QAnon is the blah blah blah, and she comes from like this spiritual kind of.
And to be fair, QAnon people aren't okay. Like
No.
Wrong.
No.
They need help.
Agreed, and that's the thing, right? I mean, like I remember when I was watching, you know, when the fallout after the insurrection happened, I was like, these poor fucking idiots. You know what I mean? Like I felt bad for them.
Did you know that during that insurrection, AOC was actually huddled behind a desk with a 50 cal and was, you know, defending? She was defending with a machine gun.
Based.
It was like a pillbox behind her where she kept all of everybody else. Like she actually fought.
She had a Gatling gun.
Day.
She placed a bunch of claymores outside her door.
Yeah, she did. She was a hero
based.
that day, actually.
Yeah, and then that is the funniest part about it. Like I really do think that AOC, this is an aside, is she has like borderline personality disorder. You know, I think she's
no, she's narcissist, but it's totally in the same group.
Same group.
Histrionic.
That's the one. Yeah.
Well, histrionic, I know a lot about that actually. Which, you know, my dating life.
I was just gonna say, yeah, dating women, you sort of tend to encounter at least one in your lifetime.
That was my type, I think, for a long time. I'm gonna be honest. You know, like these super good-looking, you know, women who said all the right things and, you know, did all the right things, and then eventually you're like, this doesn't add up.
Yeah.
You know?
and then it gets you see the histrionic part, because no man when they're good looking would tell them no, and then when they're told no, then it's
snap. Well, that's not the only way you get it. I mean, with those, the histrionic personality disorder is there's a lot to it, but it mainly boils down. It's a form of, or I don't know if it's a form of, but it's closely related to, it's a type B personality disorder that, along with narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, and antisocial personality disorder, which is the sociopath. But I think that 99% of politicians are some combination of that, with the center on the narcissist stuff. Like,
Right. I
think
mean,
that they're narcissists.
it's that saying that, I think, did Carlin say so? I don't know, but it's, Washington's Hollywood for ugly people. And
Hey.
it's true. Well, I think, you know what I mean. You'll be the.
Well, I mean, the thing is like AOC is actually beautiful. She's
Yes.
a beautiful woman. Like,
Yeah.
In Congress, she's a 12 out of 10.
Oh no question. Yeah.
Like, it's not even close. But
And I think that also speaks a bit to the fact that like all of our attractive senators and representatives are the most popular and performative on Twitter, that they are
Isn't it
the
interesting?
viral celebrities of our government.
Yes.
it's almost like the people are idiots.
That's the thing, and like it's funny because I know it sounds really crass for me to call like that many people retarded or whatever, but really what it is it's like it comes from a really deep, sincere place of empathy for these people, and it's like, because it's what you were saying about how people make, like, you were saying that a lot of it has to do with mental illness, and I think that it does, but I think a lot of it
I mean, at a minor level, I'm not talking about like, complete nut jobs, but I think that people need help.
No question. But and I agree with you on, and I think that you'll agree with this too. Is it's like people's worst behaviors through online kind of participation is being validated, so it does make them sort of mentally ill in like a classic way. And I think that a lot of this comes down to the fact that every human right now. You're a motocross rider. You're also a musician. I'm a musician. Sean's worked in theaters and plays and was a ballet dancer. Those were our identities before anything else. You know what I mean? Like, us being gay was very unimportant because, well, I'm a musician first. Like, this is the other thing that I do.
Yeah,
and these people,
men.
Exactly, right? And these people, like they've now curated their image through their phone, and that then becomes what is the most important thing to them. And so they don't develop a personality, and they're kind of quietly flailing in desperation. So that's why they get
trying to find a place to fit in, which it has never been honestly my thing. Like, even when I was in school, like in high school and stuff, I was never in one of those groups. And I used to even as a kid, I used to laugh, even though I was friends with like the goth kids and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Some of them, most of them, I would still kind of laugh at them because I always thought it was funny that they're like, I'm going to be an individual just like all these other people over here.
Right. Exactly.
Like, the whole thing was just such a sham that, and I was always just fine being by myself. I didn't give a shit. I would just do what I wanted. But as a complete aside to that, just because you brought up ballet, and I don't want to forget, Sean, can you please, post a photo of you in a tutu at some point?
Just for you. I'll DM it to you first. Maybe we can do a couple edits, different poses.
Right. Because there's a second part of this, which is, can you please explain what is going on in the crotchal region of male ballet dancers?
There's a thing to this.
Oh yeah. I know exactly what this is.
Because that is just such a huge amount of something there. There's just a big.
It is
not that I stare, but I kind of stare.
As a little side note, it is well known that male ballet dancers always have enormous penises. But
is that true? Is that true? Jordan,
in my experience, you'll
have to go to our OnlyFans to find this out.
In my experience, I've known many a male ballet dancer with a generous package. But that's not why you see a giant bulge. The reason is when you're dancing, you wear something called a dance belt, which is basically like a male it's
chastity belt.
It kind of really it's like compression shorts, but just like briefs, like just that.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And they sort of
like
have
Speedo,
like
if you swam
it's
in.
like a Speedo, and instead of having like a full back where you can see like creases, they just have like a strip of fabric that goes underneath.
A G-string.
It's kind of like a G-string, but wider. It's like an inch and a half wide.
Okay.
And it's so you can't see it when they're wearing tights and stuff. But the way you position your genitals inside these things is
because you got to get it out of your way of your legs, right? For all your crazy moves you're gonna do or whatever.
Dick straight up and balls on either side.
Really? So it's like a cartoon.
Yeah.
I used to draw that all the time.
That's
balls on the
exactly
side,
it.
like
Balls on the side, dick straight up. So all of it is pushed up and forward as opposed to down and back when like compressed, you know. So that's why
Okay.
you see bulges.
And also too, I mean, your guys' job, the men's job, is to like, you know, flail the women around, and so the likelihood of you getting kicked in the groin would be pretty high. I would
also,
imagine.
very often professional ballet dancers will have additional padding or a cup there. Exactly that, so that they don't get injured.
because those chicks are like crazy. You got to lift them up, and they're gonna just whack
and
you
you're
right
not
in the...
you're not protected whatsoever because it's just tights that you're wearing most of the
Yeah.
time in classical
It
ballet.
works for Superman, I gotta say.
Oh yeah, he looks great.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm sorry for the aside, but I just heard about ballet, and it just like my brain went to those giant bulges in men's crotches for whatever reason.
Yeah, no. It's actually, I think, a question I did ask you when we first dated. I was like, what is that
What's
about?
going
What's
on
going
there?
on there? Yeah. So it's a fair one to ask. But let's see. I had something that we could.
I'm sorry.
No. It's totally fine.
I'm sorry, I
think,
give you a total.
No.
No, it was
I
fun.
jumped
I
off
had
on
a-
the side.
Oh yeah. So it's kind of related to the K-High thing. Is like the thing that I've noticed, and this relates because I saw you participating in this, the Jimmy Dore and the Young Turks, that whole like kerfuffle. And you know, it's interesting because like I like Jimmy. I haven't liked the Young Turks even since the early ages of political YouTube. I've just always found Cenk to be one of the loudest idiots I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, he's a meathead.
And I've just never found any of his takes to be interesting or nuanced or whatever. But Jimmy was fun just in terms of just being a fuck you type of person. But now, like, I can only watch so many clips now of Joe Biden sucks. You know, I mean, I get it. He sucks, blah, blah, blah.
He does suck.
He totally sucks, but it's like, it's usually just, it feels like this circular thing. And I've started to kind of tune out. I like when he has Aaron Mate on, which was the point of this whole thing. And I liked Aaron Mate's dad, Gabor, or like, he's still alive, as a reporter. And a journalist.
But is he still a reporter?
No, not anymore. He's
so you could say liked.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's true. Past tense. I just didn't want to make people think he was dead or anything. But yeah, it was, you know, like this. It kind of goes to the K-Hive thing, and also how you were getting attacked by them by white ladies about how you're a racist for even criticizing a black woman. And so it's this purity spiral of the progressives that never has a bottom, and they don't realize that they're just dividing themselves up so you can't progress, right? And so what made me crazy about the Jimmy Dore and Young Turks thing was it wasn't about the OPCW thing and how the Young Turks lied about it. It was about who was the bigger misogynist, Jimmy Dore or Cenk. Like,
which is by far Cenk.
Well, of course. Of course. Of course. But but to me, that was so inconsequential to the actual discussion, you know? And like, that's what they made it all about. And I respected Jimmy's point of like, and I called it out even with several different Me Too type things of how it can be cynically used to just like diffuse any criticism amongst yourself. People use race for this or homosexuality or like whatever.
Yeah, but again, it's just the divide and conquer thing, right?
It is.
That's all it's about.
But I mean, I've seen a lot of leftists that I know on Twitter or in real life that's what they're focused on, and not, wait a minute, we shouldn't be airstriking Syria like we just did. You know, I mean, that's the point.
But I think that boils down to, you know, and this is said a lot, but I think it's said a lot because it's true. I think it boils down to that person's particular privilege, right? So if you're not worried about feeding your child or paying your medical bills or whatever struggles we all have, then people who don't worry about those things often don't, they don't see why other people should, right?
Yeah.
It's so, and frankly, I mean, this really sucks, but people maybe everywhere, but definitely in the United States, when they see a child blown up by an airstrike or something like that, they see this picture. I think a lot of them they don't think that's it's not an American kid, right? So,
I think it's hard for people to comprehend human suffering, and it's not. I think it's almost a design of our brain in the sense of like, like take COVID for example. Like, I'm like not bringing up either side on it, but more so that like, I guess it was like the side that was like the Democrat Party line when Trump was president was like, basically we found out that they were standing on the bodies of the 500,000 dead in order to make themselves look virtuous, right? And I found people that were convinced by this messaging and not cynical about it like I was, saying the same lines that like Rachel Maddow would say, for example, right?
Yeah.
And then, but I would tell these people to try to deprogram them. I'm like, if you were to comprehend the human death and suffering that happens on this planet of 8 billion people every single day, you'd want to blow your brains out every day.
Right.
And so we have the capacity to care about 10 people, I would say, like at a minimum, but I would say like maybe 20 absolute maximum.
That's true. But the difference is if you, like, I don't have to care about every individual person on the planet, or even in my country, or even in Syria or wherever. Like, I think you can and should, divide it up so that like how I look at it is that it's a principled stand, to be against war, especially when it's a unjust war for oil money and this sort of stuff, is just a principled thing. The death and suffering is a part of war. That's what you get,
It's a feature.
Yeah, it's a feature. So, like I like to, it's hard to do, but I think it's actually helpful to take a sort of a wider view and take it from a principled position, about humans in general and stuff. But I still do use like pictures of these poor kids and stuff like that to motivate myself when I have campaign stuff to do and I don't want to do it and stuff like that. I have pictures on my phone that I look at that are really awful.
Sure.
And, just to help, like, understand that stuff. But like, I think sometimes though there's also the other side of this too, which is that sometimes when somebody is struggling and they have so much that they have to struggle with in their daily life, it's difficult to worry about people on the other side of the planet who your country is blowing up.
Of course. And I actually my biggest, I would say, like, number one priority progressive stance is anti-war. I mean, it's just sort of been because, like, again, in terms of like not being able to comprehend all the death and suffering without wanting to die, there is a kind of a broader context that's a little bit more. You can put it in a box in your brain easier, which is like, well, how about we just fight for our country to mitigate human suffering around the world, right? And like not be a participant in it, So I can't really control, if a kid in Africa dies of malaria, you know what I mean? But in a horrible way with flies in his eyes, it's a horrible image and sight. I'm sure you've seen that I think it was National Geographic picture that is just horrifying. By the way, that girl lived, believe it or not, that picture, but.
That's good.
Yeah, it is good, but it's a horrifying image regardless. But people, it's people who, back to that performative nature of people that are having like an identity mental illness crisis, where they need to just get their ideas from other people and they can't form an original thought and compartmentalize, like, well, how can I actually make a difference, even just with my words or talking to my friends? And, saying, like, being able to articulate it in a way of saying, well, anti-war in terms of I don't want America to do any more imperialist shit, because it results in the same outcome every time. It's like a power vacuum that makes life worse for all the civilians there, not to mention the ones we kill in the interim. And then American soldiers die too, or get cancer or whatever else. And like that to me is
but some private companies make a lot of money, so you have to really think about
the people, because they're people now.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, you're saying all this negative stuff, and I'm compelled to point out that the shareholders of Raytheon are doing just fine.
Oh yeah.
So,
well, they're all.
I mean, it's just a few thousand or 100,000 or a few million dead people.
Yeah.
It's just. I mean, once you get past 20. It's kind of just all the same, I think.
Yeah. I think it really is that sort of thing of like, people don't really know how to feel about it, and so they either take like the fuck yeah, the troops, we're bringing Jesus to the Middle East kind of group on the right, and then on the left it's like the interesting part, in this is kind of relates to the Jimmy Dore thing and kind of Glenn Greenwald or whatever, is like people have been convinced that journalists like Matt Taibbi or Glenn Greenwald are like right-wing figures now. And
I mean, they're a little bit. I think Taibbi considers himself a liberal, so he's a little right.
Little right, sure. But I've been reading his stuff since probably like 2010 2002 actually, when I was like first subscribed to Rolling Stone, and like he was always like a anti-war and then like anti-big bank kind of person in what he would report on. And his people think that
didn't he start out as a Republican like a long time ago?
I never heard about that.
Swear.
No.
I could swear the first time I saw him on Bill Maher way back, he was a Republican at that time, but I could be wrong.
I never heard that, and certainly just based on his reporting, not knowing his affiliation back in 2002, I never. It was pretty like progressive kind of ideas in a world that was much further culturally right than it is right now. And anyway, though, like. I mean, I think that people would make the assumption that these two writers are right wing because they focus on one type of article they're writing about like criticisms of the Biden administration or like identity politics or any of these kinds of things.
And I think they're both gay. Are they both gay?
Matt Taibbi has kids. Greenwald is gay though.
That doesn't matter.
He's currently married. I mean, it doesn't matter, but but Glenn Greenwald is delightfully gay. In fact, like I love it when people try to argue with him because that sass that we can possess just deflates anything because it's
amazing.
It's like this level of being cunty that is just a very powerful weapon that he can wield.
Yeah, but he leaves people unable to really respond. Like they're just kind of like
And that's the thing too, is he's smart, and but it's interesting because like if you read everything the people who are calling these people right wing figures don't read what they write, and
not just that, but technically most of the people calling them right wing figures are right wing people.
In what way?
Because liberals are right wing.
Oh well, yeah.
Most of the people that freak out about criticizing the Democratic Party, they go as far left as being a liberal, essentially. And progressive now it seems just means liberal, but also we like gays or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's not really like a big. They're still very pro business and very pro warfare and.
But I think
all
like
that sort of stuff. So
I think based on ignorance, it's like because what I was getting to with talking to two about them is this fascinating shift through which I'm watching progressives in the left, like really truly left people, get behind our intelligence agencies, and
that's my favorite part about the Trump administration.
What the fuck?
That was my favorite part. Is prior to that, it seemed like liberals and leftists and progressives or whatever, however you want to describe everybody, they were the ones. Who were like, hey, we should be really careful about these, the CIA killed, Kennedy, if you want to buy that, or, and Martin Luther King essentially was killed by the FBI.
Iran-Contra.
All this different stuff. And it's usually the liberals and stuff up prior to 2016 who are like, oh, you can't trust these agencies. And then all of a sudden Trump gets in and now they trust everything the agencies say, man. They're like, those agencies are 100% right all the time. Even when they contradict themselves, they're right.
Yes.
And it's awesome. Like, I think it's so fun. And it's really interesting because they did a poll. I saw it a little over a year ago, but maybe 2 years ago, where it was like how opinions changed by party affiliation over time on the war in Syria. And at first, like, when Obama was president, he started that, he's the one that invaded Syria unconstitutionally without congressional approval.
Yes.
After saying, by the way, that he was going to, that he didn't want to do it on his own and that he wanted Congress because of the constitutional factors, and then Congress wouldn't do it. And then he did it anyway.
Right.
So, but back then, liberals were very like, we have to, like, in the polling they were like, oh, something like 70% of them, 65% of them, like, we really have to do something about this Assad guy and whatever, and like, we have a duty to whatever. And then a few years later, Trump's in and he's talking about getting out of Syria, and they did the same poll, and they've been doing it over time, but like they did it again, and it essentially flipped, where the two parties now believed the opposite of what they believed back when Obama was president about the exact same thing. And that to me is just like, do we deserve a country or a government, like, as a whole? Like, if you're that easily manipulated, if just based on the party affiliation of the person in the White House, that's what determines what's right and wrong to you to such an extent, like, that is fucking depressing, man. Like that is really, really bad.
And this is what I've really struggled with this, like the progressives and even so far left is like the hammer and sickle crowd is like, you know, we had a pretty like decent chunk of people that were that kind of crowd. And then I would say, like, you know, I'd play like a Tucker Carlson monologue where he's talking about how we should free Assange. And I'm like, well, this is objectively good. And they're like, why are you platforming a Nazi? And it's like, but you...
He's not a Nazi, by the way. Like, the guy's an actor, essentially. He's a performance artist.
Yeah.
But on top of that, like, I don't think he has real, whatever, values or, you know, principles. I think that he just says whatever he thinks will go over well with his audience so he can get better ratings. I don't think it has anything to do with what he actually believes.
He's a populist pundit. I mean, it's weird.
Yeah.
It's like so basically whatever way the wind's blowing. So it's like, yeah, do I believe he has any conviction about saying that? No. But is it nice for a right wing audience when he has like the largest viewership to hear that we should probably free Julian Assange? Is that objectively good? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but probably you know, in some imaginary world where John McCain was president when all this stuff went down, and you know, instead of Obama, chances are pretty decent that you know, Tucker Carlson would be, you know, for keeping Assange in prison, and
for sure,
like, you know, because that's how that system works, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I always think it's funny because I don't think Tucker Carlson's a particularly smart guy or you know, anything, and I don't spend any real time on him at all. I watch clips occasionally on Twitter when people post them. That's it.
Yeah.
But like, I think that this declaration of calling people Nazis all the time, you know, it's kind of cheapening what a Nazi is. You know, during World War II, if you showed up to an actual Nazi rally with fucking helmets on, you know, like football helmets or bicycle helmets, holding half a trash can as a shield with a club in your hand, they would just murder everybody there, pour them into a mass grave, cover them with lime, bury them, and nobody would ever hear from those people again. That's what actual Nazis would do.
Right.
So, like, it's not the same thing. I get so upset because it's like the actual Nazis were really bad. You know,
yeah,
super, super evil behavior. Like they murdered obviously millions of people in the Holocaust, but they had no bearing, like, you know, no hesitation murdering civilians anywhere if that served their purposes. Like they were really, really bad. And you know, everybody's a Nazi now somehow. And I'm like, that was the worst possible thing then.
Well,
like, how is it possible that we still have these things around, like in those kind of numbers? And they're in mass media, apparently. They're
right.
Like on TV.
Well, it's not even just. I mean, the cheapening of words that used to have a lot of meaning. Like, I don't know what racism means anymore. Like, based on how often they call people racists. Like, I'm like,
yeah. Well, based on that, it doesn't mean anything. And that's my point about the other thing is that. You know, using the word Nazi too much, and then Nazi no longer has a meaning, right? And it's
fascism too. It's like
exactly. And
it's also
fascism. Like, the base of fascism is that when the companies, you know, corporations, private industry controls the government. Like that's essentially the basis of it.
Right.
There's a lot of other stuff around it, but if you go by the basis of that, you know, essentially a corporatist government, we've been a fascist country for at least 40 years.
For sure. Yeah.
You know, every single president has been fascist for at least 40 years.
Yeah. I mean, I would say at this point, it's like a fascist technocracy. It's like,
yeah,
it's
that's right.
Bizarre.
Yeah.
Yeah. But everybody uses it wrong. You know, like the right uses the word fascist to mean, you know, oppressive or, you know, mean, I guess. Like, you know, when Antifa shows up and they're beating on people with clubs and then they're like, that's fascism. It's like, that's not fascism.
No,
that's not fascism. That's authoritarianism. There's all kinds of words for it, but it ain't fascism. That's not what that is.
Well, and how often, like, let's take Antifa, for example, how often that gets projected as like a big problem. And I think it's like, maybe it's enough dorks to fill like the will turn. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, really. I mean, they're just a bunch of dorks. And it's like, and again, it's like, it's not even
and
that.
I maintain, and I've said this so long, but I maintain that the real anti-fascists, if you really meant it and you're going to show up and really fight real fascists, you'd be carrying rifles.
Oh yeah.
Like all of them would be, and they don't carry rifles, and that's what makes me think even to them it's LARPing. It's mostly just about going out there and feeling like you did something good.
Yeah, yeah, and
but it has nothing to do with actually changing anything.
And it's an identity. It's clothing. It's literally clothing.
Of course, yeah,
right?
exactly, right.
And it's Proud Boys, all this shit, and it's like so it's this tough thing of like as somebody who's running for Congress, where you would like have to discuss these things with people and try to convince the American public that they're being manipulated. How would you even go about doing that? Because that's where I'm totally at a question mark right now.
Well, that is a tough sell, and I've been trying to do it with for the first couple campaigns I did it mostly with just trying to reason with people.
Yes.
It hasn't worked that good. Like mostly it's people that already had an inkling of what you're saying before you said it, and then they start to come around a little bit more maybe or something like that, but you're not taking somebody and changing how they view the world, if they're very set in it. And so but I do have some videos we're going to be producing that I think are going to start to try and make the point to people, I hope. And they're going to be more theatrical type things where it's scenarios and stuff. They're going to be political commercials essentially for my campaign, but it's not going to be like me walking around and shaking babies and kissing hands or whatever, right? So that's not going to be like the normal it's going to be types of campaign videos that people haven't seen before, and we've already I've got 2 of them pretty close to done as in terms of writing and storyboarding, and then we got like 3 or 4 more after that we hope to get out. And I think that might make it, like, if we can get them to really blow up on the internet, like that could start to change how people view things. But ultimately I do think that there is some power still in being an independent, because in my interactions, at least face to face, online is a different thing. Online is, like I said, it's not really a good audience for changing anything about it, what anybody thinks, because it's all, as soon as they're confronted with something they say they don't believe or that they think is wrong or whatever, instead of considering it, they dig in their heels and fight, so, but at face to face, being an independent is a really big, it's really good for this type of thing, to be able to convince people, because they'll always respond. Almost everybody you talk to, once you start really getting into real nuts and bolts of the problem that we face, most of them will, if I'm talking to a Trump supporter, for example, I'll start with on a given issue, because I'm trying to talk to them. And if they're a Trump supporter, I'm going to try and approach the position how they see it, right, and then tell them why that's not correct to me, and try and be kind about it, as I can, but just straightforward and matter of fact. And so I'll tell them about how Trump is doing this or that, or did do this or that bad. And then they'll almost always respond with like, oh, well, but Obama did what? Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, fuck that guy too. Yeah. Like and as soon as they understand that you don't like either party, that you view, then they start to, it like piques their interest most of the time. They're like, oh, wait, so you're not just like the other side. You're not the enemy per se. Like, and so they start to like, and you can only really do that as an independent. Like nobody's going to, even if you would, which Democrats or Republicans usually would not, but even if you would disparage people inside your own party, it just looks like because you're in that party, it sort of spoils it, right? Because they're just like, yeah, but ultimately you're going to do the things that your party wants you to do. So,
right. So you'll just end up towing the same lines, and that's like it's interesting because I've had the same, because I don't literally there's no label I take anymore in terms of what I believe in. It's like truly just, I guess independent is a nice like kind of way to put it. Yeah. For me, I just say homeless, totally homeless, and so like, but
I think independent's better. Yeah, because you're kind of making light of people who are actually without houses and shit.
Yeah, true. Bit. I'm sure they don't have a party affiliation either.
They're not watching this show. They're not voting.
Yeah, but so maybe independent's better.
Sure. I'll maybe give that a. But usually doesn't even come up. It's like it's what happens is the same thing though. It's
I got a visitor.
Oh yay! We love seeing her.
Oh.
Hey, hang on. I'm going to pull my earphones out so she can hear you guys. Come here, babe.
Oh my goodness.
Hello,
Daphne.
Sorry about the echo. If there's an echo, I'll try and back it down a little.
It's okay.
That's okay.
Yeah,
Hi,
she's
hi.
so much bigger now.
You see him high? You see him waving?
Hello.
Say hi. Look, that's you.
Hi, Daphne. The picture we posted with you on the thumbnail, she's so much littler.
I know.
Hi, there we go. Hi, Daphne. I like your bow or a hair clip. What's her shirt say?
I don't know. What does it say? I think it's just a picture.
Oh, it's just a picture. That's a little tiger.
Yeah, it's like a cheetah.
A cheetah. Are you fast like a cheetah, Daphne?
Are you fast like a cheetah, Daphne? Yeah. She's always so shy. She won't shut up when she's not on a podcast or whatever. But now,
I think that it's object permanence. She does not understand what's going on right now.
yeah. Hey,
Hey.
give me a kiss. Take a kiss.
Oh.
Blow kisses. Blow kisses. Go ahead. Do it.
Oh, so sweet.
Hi, baby.
Sweetheart.
That's my world.
Oh yeah. That is the kind of, like I was saying with family, that is what matters. And which is what makes a lot of this digging our heels into partisan stuff so tragic for a lot of people I know.
Yeah.
Like cutting off family members over politics. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Crazy.
I don't know. Cuz if your tap water stops turning on and everyone that has guns are going to rule everything, who do you think is going to be the one that takes care of you? Do you think it'll be your friend or your neighbor? It'll be your family.
Yeah.
You know? And
for those of us lucky enough to have, have a family, but it's family first, then friends and community, then on outward, right?
Yeah.
Like concentric rings going out.
Yeah.
Like as far as and family is obviously a very, very important thing. And this sounds really, this is going to sound dumb, but I mean, maybe it will. I don't know, because I've never said this shit before, but it's something I've been dwelling on a lot since we've had Daphne, about family and having I don't like the term. I don't like this word, but I don't know a better word. Having a legacy, meaning like, you have something that came from you that's going to continue on after you. What I've started to understand and I've started to sort of put together is that the family values people are right about family values, the concept of family values. Where they go wrong is all the shit they throw in with it, with they're anti-gay stuff or anti-abortion stuff or all these other different things. And so that to me is a big, so it's hard to say I'm like a family values guy because it gets lumped in with all that other shit and that's all poison, but I think that is a real thing, that like good policy should prioritize children, for example, as part of a family and family in general. So good policy, for example, like this came up on Twitter not long ago, but Bernie Sanders was coming out talking about how, we needed to make sure that everybody could afford childcare, right, for their child or whatever. And being a guy who's with my daughter almost every day, by myself, because my wife is like, I work from home. My wife works from work. So, when I'm with my daughter every day, like it's the most rewarding, most amazing thing. And it's hard to put into words how great it is, to be honest. But now that I know how great it is, it's hard to think that some people aren't going to be afforded the ability to even do it, to become a parent, to be able to raise a child. There's a lot of the left on our side, or my side, that people talk about like, oh, we shouldn't be having kids because it's going to kill the world and everything else. And I'm like, have fewer kids, right? But you should have kids. Like people should have kids. Like it's a wonderful thing. It's what makes life life, in my opinion. And
Agreed. I've had this exact conversation with people before because I think that I value it in the same way you do. Not equal because I don't have a kid, but like because the prospect of having one is so complicated and expensive.
For you.
That like when people fart out kids they don't really want, I find it so kind of insulting. Where it's just like but I mean I've thought about it even just on a massive existential scale. Is like, think about everyone who lived and died for us to be having this conversation right now.
Yeah, exactly.
And the line is a tragedy. You know what I mean?
It's a tragedy.
It seems like the most morally wrong thing you could possibly do.
Well, yeah, and so the thing is like good, like instead of making childcare more affordable or whatever, however they want to do that, how about you just give people enough money when they have small children that they could stay home with their child?
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
There is no substitute for the actual parent. And by parent, I don't mean biologically. I mean the person who's there for them when, all the time, from when they wake up in the morning and they something they need to eat breakfast, you make them breakfast, and the person that is doing the parenting,
the person who has the strongest vested interest in that individual's growth.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that is like a really, really underrated thing in our society nowadays. Like people don't, and it's been spoiled because politicians, like they talk about children all the time and they never do shit for children. But they talk about them. They're just a prop, for most politicians. And so, as a politician, it's hard for me to be like, "Hey, what about the children?"
Right?
Because I know if somebody said that to me, I'd be like, just because I know that politicians talk about children and they don't want to do anything about it. They've never tried, and children are just constantly losing ground. But like, there's things like I wish Daphne's doing words, like she's talking now, so she has words that she uses. And the other day we got her to say shit show, which I thought was pretty fun.
Wow.
And so but she's using words now. She could use more, but she's really smart, but she's also really stubborn. I don't know where she gets these characteristics from. But she, as a child, like she is doing so amazingly well as far as her motor skills, her abilities, like, sorting shapes into different shapes, in boxes and like all these different drills that you want to try and get children to do. So it's this developmental, the first 3 years of a child's life is like the biggest deal. So when we had Daphne, we made a pledge to each other that no matter how bad it got, like, money wise or anything else, that one of us for at least the first 3 years was going to be with her all the time, that we weren't going to pawn her off on daycare or any other sort of anything, and like I see that happen. Like I see people that had a baby 3 weeks ago and then they're back at work 2 weeks ago. And I'm like, how? Number one, why would we ask somebody to do that? Yeah. That's a bullshit thing to do. But also, how can you even do that? Like 2 weeks, you don't, your life is still a shambles after having a baby. You have no idea how to even, like you're barely getting shit together at that point.
Yeah, it's the most defenseless thing on the planet. And so
yeah, but also like your life, like your ability to do anything, like like what time do you get up? How do you get things going? All these different, like it's this huge, massive like change in your life that this thing shows up, and now this is your complete priority at all times.
Yes,
that 100% of the time this is first place priority over everything else.
Yes,
literally everything else, even yourself. Your own life, your spouse's life, like that. Number one is the child, yes. Right? And it's this instinctual thing that is hard to explain to people, but it happened to me. Like the moment I held her in the delivery room, I held her and I looked at her and I was like, shit. Like the first thought was like, oh my God, she's so beautiful. I'm so glad. everything, like she has 2 ears and 2 eyes, and like, I'm like counting her toes and shit. Like,
Yeah.
everything's fine. And then immediately after that, I looked at her and I just realized that every single thing in my life took a step down in priority.
Yeah, your personal autonomy is permanently modified.
But it wasn't like a negative. Like, I thought that when I was younger and I considered this thing, because my parents would tell me about it, whatever. I thought that was like a horrible thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, man, that sounds awful. Like, the people are just, but when it happened to me, there was no good or bad. Like, it didn't feel good or bad. It just was.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
this is truth now.
Yeah.
And you're just like, shit, like, this is just how it is. So, like, those people should be around their kid as much as possible. All the other shit we talk about as a society, in terms of social ills of our society, from the racism and misogyny and all this other stuff, all the way to drugs and crime and all these other things that ail our society, would all improve immeasurably. Not immeasurably, probably very measurably. If parents were afforded the ability to be with their children and teach their children what they know,
right?
So that families can grow, over the course of time, not just grow in terms of numbers, but grow emotionally and mentally and logically, so that you can teach your child what and then your child can improve upon that and teach their child. Yeah. So it takes that sort of a thing, and the fact that we as a society want to pawn that off on people who have like 30 other kids at their daycare or whatever, and you're just like, well, I gotta go make money for this rich guy,
right,
who owns this company. It's just a really bullshit way of doing anything like this. Like, you can't expect that you're going to improve society that way. Like, it's just really, really dumb if you really think about it. It's just nobody spends the time to think about it, you're just like, this is how it is,
Yeah, and it's strange, but it's gotten weirder. I mean, I've noticed, and we've talked about this a lot, but this like fetishization of like girl boss culture.
Yeah,
where it's like more women CEOs, and it's like, and I don't care which one stays home. It doesn't matter. That's not my point. My point is that like,
I would be happy to stay home.
Yeah, no, of course. Like, so that's not
forever. I love hanging out with my kid.
Of course, yeah. That's not the take. Is that like, I don't think women should. The women should be at home. Like, not that shit. It's more like this idea that like, because women classically were the ones that stayed home, they need to now have this impressive, on paper but soulless, life-sucking job working at BlackRock managing rich people's money,
right?
Because that will give them status, and not the fact like this. And the problem is that when you talk like this, it gets denigrated as like a right-wing talking point, and
I know,
and I've never understood.
And it's not a right-wing talking point. The thing is like, I understand why people would have an aversion to this, because prior to where we live now and how things are now, women were wholeheartedly expected,
for sure,
to stay home with the children, and they weren't really accepted in work or corporate world or anything like that. It was a man's world.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important that people have a choice. Like, I'm not trying to tell any of these women that want to climb corporate ladders or however they want to do it. I'm not saying that they can't or shouldn't. I'm saying if you would rather be with your child, you should be able to.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it is. So, at least one of the two in the couple, you know what I mean? Or if there is a couple, if there's only one, then,
yeah,
you got to give that person a lot of money so that they can stay home with their kid. But like, all this stuff over time is going to make for a better society and a safer society for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that keeps me up at night, oh my God, there's so many things that keep me up at night regarding being a parent. But the main thing, one thing that always runs through my head, and it's a conversation I've had with a lot of people, but most recently I had it with a family friend, my wife's sister's husband's friend's wife at a family function. I did that in my head. I think that's right.
I followed you.
At a family function, we were talking politics, and I was a little high and she was a little drunk. And, but we were being respectful, but she's a Trumpy type person or whatever. And at one point in it, she said that she makes like $35,000 a year, which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
But then like later in the conversation, she like almost out of nowhere, like as an objection to something I said, she goes, "Look, I take care of my kids, and my kids, like that's my job, is to take care of my kids. When somebody else doesn't do their job and doesn't take care of their kids, why is that now on me to take care of their kids? And my first reaction was to say, like, bitch, you make $35,000 a year. Nobody's trying to tax you to take care of somebody else's kids.
Right.
We're talking about like Jeff Bezos and like, really rich people who are doing really well. But at the same time, I didn't even say any of that. It went through my head, but I just said, look, and this is truly how I feel. And it's the thing that I think people need to really start to understand. And maybe it came to me a little easier because of my circumstances. I'm an old dad, right? So I'm going to be 60 when Daphne graduates high school, right? Mm-hmm. So I will probably be the oldest dad in all of her school classes, among all the kids, which means I'm going to be looking down to all the other parents at all times as also stupid young people. Like, just be this crotchety old guy.
Yeah.
Like, you don't remember the 1980s, but at the same time, I realized that I'm not going to be around for her as long as I would like to. Like most parents, they have their child in their 20s at some point. Like that's the key, where most people do it. And I'm in my 40s, so like essentially I'm 2 decades behind. So most of those other parents that do it young, they have, they can be around for their child for essentially, if you average it out, 20 extra years or so. Mm-hmm. As the child grows into an adult and has children of their own and all that stuff. But I don't know that I'm ever going to see a grandchild from Daphne, even if she decides to have children. I don't, like I'll be 70 when she's 28, that,
yeah,
I don't know what I'm going to see. And,
well, if it gives you any comfort, real quick on that one, is my dad is 70, I'm 31, so it's kind of a similar sort of deal.
Yeah.
And he has a granddaughter who's 4 now, so it's certainly possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's what it is, right? But where I'm going with this is that knowing that I'm not going to be here to take care of her as long as a lot of other parents are going to be here to take care of their kids, because that shit doesn't stop at 18, No.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing that's how that's going to be, I see that other kid that's a friend of ours talked about, this kid that's not being raised well and whatever. I realize that kid is going to be in the world with my daughter without me. So I'm not going to be here to protect my daughter from that kid when that kid turns into a total shithead because it was, they were raised poorly and had to rely on selling drugs or whatever other things mm-hmm. in order to, or theft or whatever, in order to survive because the society didn't take care of them. Society didn't provide them with a good education or enough of a safety net so that they could actually, have a healthy upbringing, right? Sure. Mm-hmm. And so those children are going to be on this planet as adults with my child as an adult. Mm-hmm. That's a liability, man. That is a fucking liability. So even if outside of all the ideological stuff about like, I believe this should be this way, or I believe this should be whatever, all the stuff that lefties or right-wing people or whatever say, that's the truth. The truth is that the worse our society does at raising children, the worse society is going to be for my child. Child.
Yeah, of course. And it's, it's interesting because like I've actually had a similar conversation with somebody who was on the right that said something similar to that. And I'm like, well, it's not about the person that you might be theoretically giving money to. It's about the child who's a victim in all this that doesn't have anything to do with that person.
The dad rights people that are always talking about like, she spends half the welfare or half the child support on, whatever, alcohol and, a car payment or whatever. And I'm just like, yeah, so like they should have to account for all the money that I send them and show me where it's spent. And I'm like, no, actually she shouldn't, because that's your kid. Right. So like her having a new car is good for the kid because the kid is safer in the car.
Of course.
And she can drive him to school or whatever, like however, but like, those dad's rights people get off on that one a lot, and it's just like, dipshit, it's not about you, it's about the kid. So like, shut your face and deal with it. Like I saw this video of a guy who dumped like 180,000 pennies or something like that on the street in front of his ex's house as his last child support payment. And he posted it all proud of himself, like, ha ha, bitch, you know? And I'm like, you're a fucking piece of shit. You know that?
That's grotesque.
You know? Like, you're a real piece of shit. Like, just write the goddamn check.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I know.
But like, he's actually proud of it. Like, and I bet you all his dude friends are like, dude, that was awesome, bro. You got her. And it's like, it's the fucking kid. It's not about the woman. She might be a total piece of shit to you, but the kid.
Well,
the kid is what matters.
He's acting as if it's like an alimony payment or something. I mean, it's like, and it's like that's the thing, man. And like, and it gets back to this idea of like how people have to perform in a certain way to fit in with whatever their political ideology is, and then getting away from the human element of what's really going on. You know, this person may, like, you know, if you give them welfare or whatever, they may spend it on stupid shit. But it's like, you're yelling about it is never going to fucking change that. It's like, you're not going to change people's behavior based on. And then you want to hire you want to hire welfare auditors. Well, there's more tax money that'll go to doing that. So it's like, it's just it's this never ending cycle of stupid that it makes it really just. Basically, it's like, that's kind of like why, in terms of just the pandemic really made this intense for me. It's just my circle is so small now. It's just like the people who like can talk like this.
I'm sorry, I was about to make a crass joke.
Butthole.
Yes.
Depends on which day of the week. Yeah. But yeah, no. I mean, it's like this never-ending cycle of stupid, and it's like people and how much people want to talk about this shit and argue about it. And then I've just, the people that I can't take it anymore, I just go, well, what's your fucking plan? What's your plan to fix it? Tell me what that is. If you don't have a plan, shut your fucking mouth. Enough out of you.
Stop fucking whining about shit and do something. Like, you know, I have a really good friend. Like, I've known since we were probably 11 years old. We graduated together in high school, whatever. And he lives like around the block from where I grew up, right? Still. And dude, his Facebook page is like Andy Rooney. It's like whining about shit that has no bearing on anything. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you know who Andy Rooney is?
I do, yes.
I do not.
I knew you wouldn't. Yeah. Okay. So, because you're like 10, right?
Yeah. I'm 15. I'm Jordan's child.
15. Bride. Yeah. I mean, it's probably legal somewhere.
Florida.
but no. So Andy Rooney had like this show where he would just basically gripe about stuff like what's going on with me all the time. He was just basically an old griper on television. But like his posts on Facebook are just like, all these people are sitting in such a long line just to get gas at Costco, and like they're gonna wait for probably 20 or 30 minutes just to save a few bucks on gas. And I'm like, yeah, because they probably don't have a job as good as yours, so that makes a much bigger difference to them. But why the fuck would you complain about that in the first place? They're not bothering you. Like, you're not getting your gas at Costco. So what do you give a shit? Like, why do you care? Yeah. You know what I mean? But it's like that type of it's just like, get off your ass and do something. Stop whining about shit. Stop making yourself into some sort of a moral authority on stupid bullshit too. You know, like actually like do something.
Yeah.
You
yeah.
know?
Well, and like, and it's interesting because you kind of see both sides of the spectrum. I see the biggest whiners to be the ones that have sometimes the least. And then so they, instead of like fixing some of their shit, like, cleaning their lawn or whatever, they decide to just, complain about it. But that's less of it. Most of it are people who are in like, it's boomers, dude. I mean, a lot of it is boomers. I know you're not a boomer, but it's like, it's this thing of like people who literally had, because Gen X got caught in the middle of all this bullshit. But it's like,
I'm Xennial. I'm like at the end of Gen X.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right before.
And it's like, my father is well into being a boomer, and his lack of touch.
Yeah, my parents are boomers too.
Yeah. Well, your dad went through a lot of shit, but
but anyway,
no. Well, but it's but he bought a house for like $11. Paid like $7 for his college tuition. How
come everybody else can't do this nowadays? Pick yourself up by your goddamn bootstraps,
right?
And pay 1,200 times as much for college and 400 times as much for a house.
And he was never like, he would never rant about it, but it's like if I started to complain about anything, he would turn it into something like that, like, well, you're not working hard enough or something. And I'm like, when the pandemic happened, really did make him wake up. And I'm like, look, Dad, when I turned 18, the 2008 housing crisis started, right?
Yep.
And it's like any job prospect or income ability that I would have had, gone. And then things started to kind of creep up, and then pandemic, gone again. And then both of these things had the largest upward transfer of wealth to make boomer shareholders in stock more money, where then it just comes back to them complaining about the same thing and being like, well, why aren't they taking these jobs that pay no fucking money? It's unemployment. I mean, that must be what it is.
Or like I knew a guy, I say knew because he blocked me on Facebook after we've known each other for like 15 years. We've known each other for like personally known each other for like 15 years, but he's a boomer too, and he was going on and on about how, because he owns like 3 homes and he rents out 2 of them and lives in the other one, right? And then and according to him, he saved every dime he could of his job, and then and all his coworkers were spending money on all kinds of stuff that they didn't need. This was his story, right? But I'm like, you realize that doesn't, like, because his point is that people should be like him, and then they would be successful like him or whatever. And I'm like, bro, first off, people who are 30 now, this was like last year, but I said people who are 30 now were 18 when the financial system completely shit itself in 2008, right? And then housing, you couldn't buy them because you couldn't get loans at first, even if you had money. But most people who are 18, they wouldn't be able to buy one anyway. So by the time those people were like 25, which is a decent, historically speaking, a decent age of buying a home, your first home. By that point, the houses were already crazy expensive again. It like went nuts, and because all these private corporations buying up all the housing and everything else with cash, and which is still going on, and the housing prices are now completely out of whack. And I'm like, so because he mentioned how much he's worth, and I know that included the value of the homes that he has, and I'm like, yeah, but that's not real. Because that shit has to crash again, because it's not based on any real value in the actual home. It's just based on, the fact that there are these corporations who still think it's worth it because they have so much money that they could just buy all these homes and then rent them out, and it's just like future proof income, for the corporation. And I'm like, so here's the thing. I said, you grew up in a time when you got to go to college for almost nothing. Your first house cost you almost nothing. And sure, I mean, if you want me to pat you on the back because you never got a second mortgage on your house to buy something else like a lot of people did, then okay, I like you if that's really a thing. But ultimately, all you really did was buy a house at the market value at that time, pay off the mortgage, and then buy other houses the same way in the 80s and 90s when you could, right? And then retire, and now you have this rental income coming in that keeps you afloat or whatever. I'm like, but you would not be able to do that if you were born in 1990. Like, it's just it's not real. Yeah. It's a fucking fake thing. And he literally after that, he's like, I thought you were cool, Steven. I know we don't agree on certain stuff. Oh my God. But I'm done here. And he just fucking, because I had the audacity to suggest that he's not the king shit of world of the entire planet who just had complete control over his life this whole time and was able to just do everything perfectly, and that everybody else sucks because he was able to do it. It's like, no, dick, the fucking economy sucks. The system sucks way worse now than it did. Like, you were just born earlier and you're somehow trying to take credit for your time of birth. It's fucking stupid.
You have the audacity to sincerely not think about yourself.
Yeah, like, what the fuck? And so but it's that sort of thing too, is that there's like, people get offended by pointing out that things are a lot harder now than they were then, and that they've benefited from how hard it's gotten for everybody else. Yes. Those people have benefited from it. I mean, the stock market is an everything bubble right now. Everything is overinflated in the stock market. It has been since probably a couple years into the Obama administration.
Yeah, for sure.
So like, it used to be that stock values were based on sales and whatever at the companies. The companies would, but now it's all speculative shit. So everybody's just buying and selling and making these minuscule gains and whatever. So like, none of this stuff is real. It's all paper, it's houses of cards, and it's all going to come come apart at some point.
Yeah.
At which
it's
point, people who think that they did everything right and whatever, and they've got it all under control, are probably not going to be under control anymore.
No.
And I'm going to be forced to not feel that bad about it.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, and again, too, it's like, if the ones who weren't, paying attention to those that didn't have the same opportunities, it's like, well, why? And they won't change. I mean, I really don't think that they'll change. But I do think that there's a large contingent of people who act like that know what you're saying is right, and their inherent sense of guilt makes them react like your friend did.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Because they know. They know he didn't do it. He knows he didn't invent anything. He's not like, he didn't steal an operating system from somebody else.
Right.
and then start a company, or whatever.
Yeah.
So like that's all, so he just sees this as, and he's like, oh, everybody else was always buying new cars or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, but you know how cheap cars were back then? Like, that's not really a thing to be worried about. Like, my wife and I haven't bought a car. My truck is a 2010 model. My wife's is a 2003 that I keep running. I do all the work on both of them and everything, but because we don't want to have a car payment, but we like our cars too, which helps.
Yeah.
But like we go to, like, I see these ads now that show up for cars, and I'm just like, Jesus Christ, who's paying $65,000 for a pickup truck?
Right.
What the fuck happened? Because in 2010, my Toyota Tundra, which is a full size truck and a super bitch and all kinds of bells and whistles on it at the time, was $28,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, how's it been 11 years and they've almost tripled in price? They're like 2.5 times the price.
It was low interest rates, which is like, it's interesting because I have a friend that owns a dealership, and he was telling me that before the pandemic, 90% of car payments were already delinquent. So that shit's about to fucking explode.
Well, here's the other thing. I happen to know there's a motorcycle dealership near me, and I'm in the motorcycle industry. There's this dealership near me that's kind of the only major one left, because prior to 2008, there were a lot of motorcycle dealers around, but that killed off like 80% of them, the 2008 crash. And so there's a place near me that's like really big. It's called Burt's, and they're in Covina or something. I was talking to somebody who works there. It turns out, like they also repo stuff when people don't make their bills, right? They repo stuff, and then they resell those motorcycles if they're in condition, or they'll work on them, make them better, and then sell them, right, as used motorcycles. They have so many, and this was as of about 2 years ago, so it's before the pandemic too. They had so many repo motorcycles that they were having to store. They couldn't put them on the floor, and this is a massive dealership, like it's huge. They couldn't put them out. They had to rent an entire new building, a whole building, just to store the repo motorcycles that they couldn't put on the floor, and it's full. As of a couple years ago, it was full. So they were like looking for another building to put more motorcycles into. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, so and that was a couple years ago, and somehow the market's still up, and I don't understand how this is working. But the other part of it is as an environmental impact thing, is we have one dealership, and who knows how many hundreds of motorcycles have been made that aren't even owned by anybody anymore, or just being stored in a place. And it's like, what are we doing?
Right.
What is this about? Dude, I'm gonna sound like Andy Rooney again, but like Andy, like when I was racing motocross, a new top of the shelf, like Honda CR250 or something like that in the 90s, it was like $3,700, maybe $4,000, something like that. They're fucking $12,000 now.
Wow.
Like these motorcycles, they're like $10,500. For like the cheapest of the bunch,
Good Lord.
And I'm just like, and dirt bikes are bikes designed to break them. Like, you crash them and you bend them up and you break them and you destroy them and you put them back together. You buy new parts and shit.
Yeah.
Like, it's a rough sport and they hit the ground hard. So like, you're buying essentially spending $11,000 or $12,000 on a thing that you're going to throw off a mountaintop and then try and put it back together.
Yeah. Well, it's this shit. I mean, it's like the phones too. It's like they release a new one and you pay however much, like $1,000 for it, and it's like just goes right in the fucking garbage, and you're like, well, I want the newest, latest thing or whatever.
Yeah, and it's just like there's something, you know, and one thing that I've like, because you know people give me shit about like driving a pickup truck and everywhere else. And I'm like, well, you know. They didn't have hybrid trucks when I bought my truck, and I don't want to buy a new truck.
Yeah.
You know, like it's just what it is. If somebody wants to buy me a more fuel efficient vehicle, then you know I'll take it.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, like the government, if they would actually subsidize like this eco-friendly driving.
Yeah, but ultimately, like I'm doing perhaps more than any individual who buys a Prius or whatever. Because of the fact that I'm keeping these cars on the road as they are, I'm making sure that they don't end up in junkyards and don't have, you know, they don't just go rot somewhere, and that it's actually things being used. And I'm not consuming more vehicles, or you know, which is all the metals that go into it and all the, you know, everything, right? Like all the stuff that they have to put in there. So, you know. There's got to be an offset in there somewhere, you know, that I feel pretty good about. You know?
You're way better off than somebody that buys a Prius. I mean, in terms of like, you know,
because they would have to buy one every 5 years or something.
Yeah,
you know,
I mean, but even that, it's like just in terms. So you mine the conflict minerals in Africa. So there's all that human suffering that happens there,
and South America.
And well, that's why that little coup in Bolivia was an attempt, because they were trying to get more lithium down there. Then they put it on a ship it up, process it up in Canada, and then send it back to Japan, and then they build the car over there, and then ship it back here. So at the end of the day, it's a carbon wash, you know.
Well, and the worst part about that shit, this is another thing that I go on and on but I haven't figured out the solution. But like we legitimately, there are companies in the United States that ship meat to China for processing, and then it's shipped back.
Correct.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Insane.
Like, this is the dumbest shit, you know. Like, and it's all about like, you know, making money for some dude at the top, right? Because the labor in China is going to more than offset the shipping prices of, you know, sending it back and forth or whatever. And it's also the shipping magnates and shipping companies that they get to make all that money doing that. So they have no interest in making it any better.
Right.
You know, and shipping, like the actual ships, freight ships and stuff like that are like the dirtiest polluters that we have in terms of machinery in the world.
Yeah.
And so like, you know, but I like there are certain things that certainly we should be, you know, that we have to ship to one another because only one place has it or whatever. Mm-hmm. But we could be doing a much better job at just keeping everything in one place, you know? Like we cut down trees in the United States. Like we grow trees, cut down trees, use the trees to make paper here. And then it's all just right here. We did it here.
Yeah.
And then we use the paper and whatever. But how it works, you know, I don't know if they actually do this with trees, but how it would work under these circumstances would be like to cut down the trees, put them on trucks, drive the trucks to a port, put the logs on a ship, take the ship across the world to where they can make the paper on the other side of the planet, and then load all the paper back up and drive. And I'm just like, what the fuck are we doing?
I know.
Like, why is this? It's so crazy. And obviously climate change is a problem, you know, and we're doing nothing.
No,
we're doing nothing. Everything we're doing is bullshit. That's like smoke and mirrors and wondering why it's still, you know what? All my friends drive Priuses and it's still getting a lot hotter outside. I don't really understand.
Yeah.
There's a hole in the earth right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We should just take all the Priuses and dump it in that fiery tornado in the ocean.
But and that's methane, right? Like,
yes, it is. It's natural gas.
It's from a gas thing.
Yeah.
So that's the worst one. And the primary use of methane anywhere in the world is for like water heaters and cooking and things like that. Like that's mostly how it's used. And that's all shit we could just do electrically. Mm-hmm. So why are we getting any of that? Why aren't we leaving the fucking natural gas in the ground? You know,
well, I mean, it would still take like fossil fuels to like power the electricity plants too. And it's like funny. I mean,
it doesn't have to.
Yeah,
it does, but it doesn't have to. Like we literally could do it all on renewables if we were so motivated, so that it would all just work. You know, like I've got this doomsday scenario of like a commune I want to build out like in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And I'm going to build it at some point. But like, you know, it's going to be in the wilderness where there's like a lot of game for hunting and, you know, this sort of stuff. But one of my big things about that was like, I started looking into it, and you can make like, there's like 5 kilowatt or 10 kilowatt river wheels, like that you put on a river that would like just the flow of the river. So you're basically using gravity to make electricity. Like these type of generators, and they're not even that much money. They're like $3,000 or, you know, $5,000. Like there's stuff out there that like there's so many things that we could be using to make all the energy that we need for everything. You know, in California, we're dealing with this drought, right? Well, I looked into like this the desalination plant that they have in Perth, Australia. It's like the biggest one in the world.
Yeah, it's actually pretty impressive.
And it's all on renewables. Like the whole thing's powered on renewable energy and everything else. And I figured out that in order to, we could give California, as it sits with all the agriculture and everything else, we could desalinate enough water with like, I think it was like 10 of those along the coast of California to just, California never has a drought again.
Yeah.
Like that's it. And that's like 120% of what we use or something like that. It would be like 10 of those things. And so that would be like $1 trillion or something like that for those 10. And I'm like, and
I mean, it seems like
how the fuck are we not doing that? Like,
it seems like worthwhile. Yeah, I mean, if it, especially when it comes down, I mean, like just the food supply of the country. I mean, it's like that.
Yeah,
alone,
and the
like,
world, but like, you would just solve that problem. That would just be solved for like $1 trillion, which, you know, at the California state level is rough because they have to get tax money to pay for that. But at the federal level, they can just fucking put that money into an account. It's like, zing, here you go. You know, like that's how that shit works. So like the federal government through the Federal Reserve, they print the money. So like they can print, they can fund infrastructure stuff like that.
Yes.
They can just do it.
Yeah.
And there's no reason not to. And I'm just like, every day I'm like, how is nobody doing this? We had this previous drought. And then a couple years ago, we had, you know, 3 years ago, we had this huge rain season when it like refilled all our reservoirs and everything else. And it's like everybody forgot that there was a drought right then.
That's how it goes.
And then all of a sudden now it's a drought again. Everyone's like, shit, why don't we do something? It was like, why?
People don't realize it's a disaster until it's in front of their face. And that actually gets me on to the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is this basically Patriot Act 2.0. They're rolling out
this is good.
without anybody's consent.
I'm really happy about this.
It's so funny to me, man, because it's like, again, this gets back to what we were talking about with people calling everybody Nazis and whatever, and then like they're now that crowd is saying that this is a good thing to happen, and I'm asking these people, which laws do we not have that we need to add more of? Like, tell me what law we don't have that told like that all those people broke the law, and then also,
are white women going to be offended by something somebody says? Because we need to have a law against that.
Yeah,
whatever that person's going to say that's going to offend the white lady, we need to have them not say that.
I'm sure they're working on a commission for that right now.
Okay, I'm just making sure the white women really need protection. You know.
Yes, of course. I mean, whenever there's never a greater injustice than what happens to some of the most privileged people on the planet. But yeah, no, it's a funny thing. Well, not funny. It's just bizarre to watch because it's like, the Patriot Act is, I mean, all it really did was take like, low IQ Muslim kids essentially, and you take the FBI would go in, radicalize them.
Yeah.
And then
they create their own terrorists, and then they're like, we caught them.
Exactly.
It's like, yeah.
And then in terms of like now it needs to be like white domestic terrorism or just domestic terrorism as a blanket, which is terrifying to think about. That they're even like considering this as an option and people are taking it seriously.
How do they not consider police domestic terrorism?
I don't know. I mean, I really don't know.
Like all these people dress basically the same, and every now and then they kill somebody I know or somebody who looks like me. Like I don't know, it feels like terrorism to me. Like,
yeah.
And they have the authority to like. They have special lights on their vehicle, and then they can make you stop. And if you don't, they can like do shit to you.
Yeah, to kill with impunity, essentially.
Yeah.
I mean,
doesn't that seem like a bit of a terrorism?
It does to me, and it like on because I always like cops. It's like funny to me, like the pro cop thing, or they're like the foot soldiers of the state, and the state the intelligence agencies on like the higher level are I mean, like, that is the fucking state. I mean, like, that is the state on like a grand scale in terms of like, the people that would help someone like Timothy McVeigh plan to do what he did. You know what I mean?
And who are they accountable to?
Nobody. Themselves.
Fucking nobody.
Like,
nobody.
I mean, like Hoover made
Absolutely
sure.
nobody, because half of them don't even talk to each other, so they're not even accountable to themselves. Like, they keep everybody compartmentalized.
Yeah.
And so people don't know a lot of the times what they're even working on and how evil it is.
Yeah, they are the Catholic priests of foreign and domestic intervention. I mean, it is like where it's just like they diddle a bunch of boys or cause a bunch of things.
The robed Catholic priests, or the ones that wear pants with a zipper?
Yeah, well, easy access either way to molest as many boys as possible. So whichever one gets you there faster. But
The
just
robe, I would think the robe.
The robe, probably. Yeah, there's just nothing underneath. You can just open it up. Yeah, and so no consequences, just funneled through, and this, and again.
And the bill though, it actually identifies at least half of the people that they identify in this bill are people I like.
Yes.
So, and could be me actually, and that's always the trouble. Conservatives back in the day, and liberals too, honestly, I think they both understood the danger better of giving the government this kind of power. Because if you think they're not going to come after political dissidents who they think might be a threat to them using these laws, you are high as fuck. And you need to get a history book and read about Martin Luther King, and read about Malcolm X, and read about Fred Hampton, and read about, any number of, white people too. They were fighting the system back then, hippies and whatnot. The government, they don't give a shit. Like, they don't really care. They care as much as we force them to.
Yes.
And the bottom line is that these, any of these things are gonna, like, I haven't even gotten my goddamn DNA mapped. I'd like to, but I don't trust any of the fucking companies that do it to not hand that shit over to the government.
Right.
And be like, this is his, and then who knows in future technology if they'll be able to actually plant your DNA places and shit like that, so that it pops up on a test, and then you can be stuck like on a crime scene or something like that. They have proof. Like, you don't know what's going to be a future technology that they'll be able to use that for.
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, if they were following you, I mean, literally, if you went to a restaurant and they just took the drinking glass, they could do that,
Yeah.
They could.
And they would. I mean,
I don't go to restaurants though.
Yeah, well, there you go. We like to cook primarily too, anyway. But
another thing that bothers me along the same lines that I've brought up on Twitter before is that when I was a child, I was in the 3rd grade. I was 8 years old. We got a field trip to the local police station, where they fingerprinted all of us, all the children.
Weird.
So that they could show us how that's done.
So cool.
That was the thing. And they fingerprinted all of us, dude.
Christ.
And I still get so pissed off thinking about this. That, like, who the fuck gave you the right to come and take a bunch of kids and fingerprint them, like, as if they're future criminals?
Right.
They're all potential future criminals or whatever. Like, that is seriously upsetting shit. But that was like 1985.
Yeah.
That was a long time ago, and it was already pretty bad. So when they start putting this shit into actual law like this, they put these laws together that are just so draconian and awful, and you could see it. Like, there's gonna be no good that comes from this. There's gonna be none. And there's going to be a lot of suffering as a result. Like, I just saw a story. I didn't see maybe you guys saw the end of it because I've been with my daughter, but I saw a story this morning that, like, a bunch of I look like black dudes got pulled over, like, in Massachusetts, or they were on the side of the road or something in Massachusetts in the middle of the night last night, and there were like 8 or 10 of them or something, and they were all armed, like, with rifles and tactical gear. And they all bailed out, like, when the cops showed up to see what they were doing or whatever, they ran off. Mm-hmm. But all the stuff I read in the report was about, like, how these guys were afraid of the cops because they didn't want to get in a shootout with the cops. but they were on their way to like they're in some like, you know, militant group, but it's just black dudes in the militant group.
Yeah, sure.
It's like the Black Panther type thing.
Yeah.
And they're going out to like meet and train with a bunch of their other people in their group or whatever, which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's fucking fine to do that. But they were so afraid of the cops, they like ran off. But like this made the news that they were like, the first thing that I saw about it was like a headline that said, you know, 8 heavily armed gunmen, you know, being searched, and everybody has a stay-at-home order or whatever in the area. And I'm just like, what's this about? And I read about it, and it turns out it's just a bunch of dudes that had guns.
Right.
Didn't actually break any laws as far as anybody can tell. The cops stopped because they were stopped on the side of the road, but they weren't even pulled over or anything. But the cops started demanding that they disarm themselves. So that's what it sounds like the actual story is.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So who the fuck are they to tell these guys to disarm themselves if they're legally armed and they're, you know, but probably the cops did that because they're black.
Sure. But I
It's
mean,
a bunch of black dudes with rifles. They're like, holy shit.
But let's even look. I mean, even take like a, you know, like a white militant group that even like might even be like white nationalists. It's like if they're like them being a white nationalist is not breaking any laws. Them being armed in a state where you can open carry is not breaking any laws. Like,
that's right.
I hate them, but I defend them to do whatever the fuck they want to do.
Well, defend their right to do that shit, right? But,
exactly.
But ultimately, if this thing goes where it's headed, then, you know, I might be shooting at them.
Well, sure. Yeah, I mean, like, well, I think that's going to be I mean, I think that this thing could potentially unify people because it was odd to me to like watch the insurrection, which to me was like a, you know, a level 6 brouhaha. The only person that died was Ashley Babbitt. And then, like,
a couple cops.
No, the cops didn't die. They didn't die there. The one cop
they died. They died of being in really bad shape because they're cops.
Probably,
and being super excited about this thing that happened.
Yeah, Greenwald wrote a great article about the.
I read it.
Yeah. So he died like of natural shit out of it because he's probably he's totally out of shape.
But they still did beat the shit out of those cops.
Oh,
and all this stuff like
no question. Like the cop getting squished in the doorway was like horrifying to see. Whatever. Like, but that wasn't the majority. I mean, what I saw, like the majority of the footage that I saw, and I watched a ton of it, was people basically taking a drunk tour through the Capitol building, and it's like, and to me it was like the people that just didn't see that objectively for kind of what it was, which was, I think, by design, a failure of the security, allegedly. And like, you know, the cops opening the gates, that's never been explained. I mean, like a bunch of just weird shit that happened. And then I didn't say that out loud for a while, that I thought it was suspicious. And then now the way that our elite are using that as a way to implement draconian laws that will squash down any dissidents, including the like people on the left who were saying how horrible this was and the end of our democracy. It's like,
those aren't on the left again. You're talking about liberals.
Yeah.
You know, the funny thing is that and I think I've said this even on your show before, but the insurrection, if they would have been fighting for the right shit, I would have been all for it. Like,
totally.
Like I would have had no problem with any of it. And I still think one of the funniest images is that dude like standing there with Nancy Pelosi's lectern, be all like,
yeah. Yes. Which was perfect.
I think that's amazing. Like, I think that's really funny. But liberals are super offended. Like, how dare you touch Auntie Nancy's fucking? And it's just like, go fuck yourself. Look, there's going to be a carpenter that got a job now because he gets to make another one of those things. He'll probably charge $10,000 for it, and the federal government will pay for it. So some carpenter is going to make a bunch of money making a new one. You know, like what have we really lost here? This isn't like a big deal. You know?
Right.
Yeah. I couldn't give a shit at all about like, any of that stuff.
You know, even though these people that were invading it thought that, you know, Trump was the next coming of Christ that was going to cure the world of pedophiles and Bill Gates.
Yeah, they're morons.
They're morons.
They're fucking morons.
Morons with like no sort of belief system, so they'd fall into a cult. Like, which, you know, I just watched like the Heaven's Gate cult documentary.
America is kind of a cult.
Yeah,
you know?
Well, I would say the political parties are cults. I mean, really.
Yeah, but America as a whole, this whole like, you know, America is great, this American exceptionalism shit, that's a fucking cult too.
Yeah, like really unbridled nationalism becomes very culty. Like,
because like I have a think about this. Like 50 years ago, a little over 50 years ago, like we landed on the moon. So as a society, I'm like thinking 50 years ago, you'd be like, wow, man, America, we did it, right? Mm-hmm. We did it. We landed on the moon before anybody else, you know, all this stuff. There are things that our country has done that I think are legit that people could be proud of, you know, pride in your country isn't necessarily a bad thing. patriotism isn't a bad thing, but the way that I look at patriotism is like a parent looking at their child. I consider my child my country, and so when my child does wrong, I want to correct it because I love my child. Because I love my child,
Sure.
I want to correct my child because I want my child to be the best it can be, and that's the right way to look at this shit, I think. The way that most people look at patriotism is actually nationalism, because it's more my country, right or wrong,
right,
type of stuff, and that's very unhealthy. And nobody wants to hang out with somebody's kid who acts like that, who's raised like that, where their parent just treats, like, no matter what they do, their parent like excuses them and supports them anyway, and like, yells at the victims of their own child's behavior, this sort of stuff. Like, that child never turns out okay.
No.
So we essentially have a spoiled, rotten child as a country. Like, that's what our country is, because it doesn't listen to us as its parents. It doesn't even recognize us as its parents anymore. So our government, they just do what they want. So my question that always comes up is that I always ask people, they're like, I'm proud to be American, and I'm like, of what? Proud of what? What have we done? They're like, America's the greatest. America does all these great things. And I'm like, since the turn of the century, name the great American accomplishment in the last 2 decades that we should all hang our hat on and be like, that's America right there. People can't come up with one.
Sure.
Like, I've never had somebody come up with one. They come up with some bullshit ones, but they're dumb, right? Like, one guy said, well, we elected a black president, a guy who would have never voted for Barack Obama. Well, we elected a black president. That's pretty cool. And I'm like, yeah, we should have been able to elect black presidents the whole time. Getting up to where you're like just level on that one point isn't an accomplishment. It doesn't make us exceptional. It just makes us like to the baseline of what's acceptable, in a society. So like, it is a cult though. Like, all the, going right back to the U.S. flag code thing, all the people wearing the goddamn flag as clothing and, talking about America, we're the best, whatever, the people that watch the Olympics and root against, human beings from another country just because they're in a different color.
Yeah.
This is all very culty shit. Like, all of it is.
For sure. And it's interesting. I don't know if I've ever said this to you before when we've interviewed you in the past, and like what it's kind of starting to look like to me in a lot of ways is like, I've always found, like Asia, many countries in Asia to be very interesting in terms of like them, things kind of ending up the same way in different ways. And I'll explain what I mean. Like, in terms of like, Asia largely, I think in numbers, I mean, like in an absence of religion, I'm not being pro-religion here, so bear with me, but it's like in an absence of religion, the religion becomes the state. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, and then,
okay, yeah.
and then instead of it being about the individual, which I think that we've held on to sometimes to our detriment, the collective becomes what's important, which is the state. And then mass death happening all around you, like with the Great Leap Forward in China, what Japan was up to in World War II, Jesus fucking Christ, Vietnam in many ways, North Korea. It's like this kind of similar human tragedy happens in all these kinds of ways, because they do become cults where you need to like excise the other, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And that's what I've really found strange.
But that's also the same. That same thing applies to like Marxists online.
For sure.
Like they become well, are you like me? You're not like me, then you're not worthy like me. And that's really where cults and religions, I mean, just generally, because I don't even know where to draw the line between the two.
It's difficult.
Is that that's ultimately what it's about, is that and that's why religion is so powerful, and why nationalism is so powerful, is because it allows people to pretend that other human beings aren't fully human beings. They're somehow lesser human beings.
Yes.
And once you can say that they're lesser human beings, well then it doesn't really matter. Like, it's only a hop, skip, and a jump to they're not actually human beings. And at that point, like, you can do whatever you want to them. Like, it's not a human being. Like, what do I care? I could kill him. I could do whatever.
Exactly.
I mean, it's a super dangerous, way of looking at things. Dogma, generally speaking, I think is dangerous, to society.
Agreed. And like, as somebody who, wasn't a Trump supporter, is not one, I found it very peculiar that, when Biden wins, this still otherization of 70 million people that voted for him. And it's like, how about you try talking to them? That might maybe do something. You know, because like a lot of their lives,
just
like,
don't do it online, because online it's worthless. But
Yeah,
if
of
you
course.
just go talk to
Right.
them face to face, it would actually probably work.
Well, because I mean, we had real-time evidence of this. I mean, Donald Trump won the election because even though he was lying, he went to these failing cities that, like, based on industries that don't exist there anymore, and told them he would do something for them. That's
Right.
literally all it took.
Well, even funnier than that, we had 2 presidents in a row prior to Biden who were elected on the basis of promising universal health care, getting us out of wars that we were in, and bringing jobs back.
Right.
There's 2 in a row.
Right.
Different parties, and neither one followed through, right? But it's 2 in a row, so it seems like that might be what the people want. I don't know.
Right.
Maybe that's what they want.
Which it makes storming the Capitol building seem not all that insane, allegedly.
No,
in
of
Minecraft,
course not.
You know, so
I mean, it was dumb. It wasn't insane.
Dumb.
The issue, the other big problem here is that, and you know, this is a hard thing to confront with people on the right, as somebody on the left who used to be on the right, but right wing, they see the government as a problem. Like, that's their dogma. Their dogma is that if the government's involved, it's going to make things worse, right? And to some extent, they're right, because the government we have works for corporations, not for people in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So they have lots of proof that the government getting involved makes it worse. They just haven't put it together that the reason why it gets worse is because the government is paid by the companies that will have the power if the government doesn't have it, right?
yes.
Like, you know, if we actually had a representative government, a real representative government with people like myself in there who are representing the people in my district and doing what's best for them, then government would be effective, actually, right? In a lot of ways. So, but they have this dogmatic belief that, like, government is always bad, and it's difficult to overcome that when you look at our fucking government. It's like it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Like it, and so, you know, it's always like, yeah, but it doesn't have to be that shitty. And they're always kind of like, you know, roll your eyes, like, yeah, I guess. You know,
Right. Yeah. And it's tough too, because it happens on the other side too. It's like, you know,
Of course.
capitalism is sort of memed into being this horrible thing, but it's like ethical companies do exist. Like Costco pays a living wage. They give benefits, like full benefits. They pay really well. Their employee retention is like 100%.
Yeah.
In-N-Out pays like they pay managers $100,000. Like for real. And then Trader Joe's, another one. It's a German company, but still, like these ethical capitalist companies do technically exist, but most of them aren't publicly traded companies.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like,
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true about the publicly traded part. I think that's a big part of it. But also, I wholeheartedly believe that so the way I explain it is always about markets. So everybody talks about the free market. They always talk about, you know, especially on the right, but liberals do too. Well, the free market. Well, they're usually saying laissez-faire capitalism. That's what they're actually referring to when they say free market. They're talking about laissez-faire, which is the government more or less stays out of the business process. That's not actually free market capitalism. We, as the people here, we are the market for any given product, and we either want it or we don't. So, like in televisions as a market, we are a free market because you can go to any store that retails televisions and you'll have an idea in your head about, like, I want to spend X amount of dollars and I want this kind of quality and this kind of size and this whatever. And then you go to the store and they either have one that meets the demand, what you want, you know, for the money you're going to spend, or they don't. If they don't, you say, no, never mind, I'm not buying any of them, and you leave. That's a free market. A free market is not just about, like, I have choices between things, but I can say no to all things available.
Yes.
That's a free market. So there are good free markets, like I said, televisions and, you know, these types of things that are optional that you don't need to have to live.
Mm-hmm.
But if you get leukemia, the hospital, you know, first off, there's going to be one drug company that has the right drug for your leukemia, the specific type you have. And the hospitals and whatever else are going to be, you know, they know that you can't say no to all treatment involved, like, because you're going to die. Like, you can't just walk out. It's not just saying no to a television. You're going to die if you don't get the treatment.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to pay for it. So that's not a free market. That's a captive market. And in a captive market, the prices always go through the roof and quality always goes down. That's how it fucking works. It's not even hard to figure that out. And if we just viewed, like, if people just understood that part of all economics, if they only understood that, we'd be fine.
Right.
We would be totally fine, because if we controlled those captive markets, either through public ownership, like the government itself running like the whole medical system or something like that, or through heavy regulation through the government, but some sort of a representative body that can control these marketplaces.
Yeah, even like small scale, like PG&E, Edison, like
right. Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Yes. So in all those cases, the thing is like because electricity is a requirement at your house, and it's not like they can run a different line to your house from a different power plant owned by a different guy.
No.
Right. It's a grid, so it's just what it is. And for whatever reason, certain people get to profit off of this. And why? Why the fuck are people profiting off of this? Why are any electrical companies publicly traded at all? Like, how's that a thing?
I have no idea. I've asked that one a lot. Yeah,
it's insane, but because we can't say no to electricity, not in this world that we live in currently, right? Like, this is how the world works. If we want to have a job, we want to be productive, we want to do anything, we have to have electricity. So, and so captive markets always go to shit. And, Southern California Edison is a great example of this, because, I mean, you guys live here. There are more solar panels on houses all across this state than I've ever, I mean, it's insane. Like every other house is like covered in solar panels practically. So there are tons of houses that are generating their own electricity. Also, schools everywhere have like the covered parking with the huge electrical grids on those, and during the summer there's not school, so guess what, that's just feeding into the system, right? You got all this stuff, there's nobody there, they're just feeding it in. We have all this stuff, and still when it gets hot, all of a sudden we get blackouts and shit, and nobody can, and that didn't used to happen, and our population is shrinking, so there are fewer people here
right
than there were a couple years ago,
right?
And still we can't handle it. And what's actually going on, because I have a friend that works at SCE, and he told me about this, and I verified. What's actually going on is that, like, the Edison has the capacity to have enough electricity for everybody. It's just that it costs them more money to ramp up that much, to have the capacity to make sure everybody has air conditioning at their house or whatever, right? It costs them more money to do it. So in the bottom line, they lose a little bit of money, even though everybody's paying for that electricity, because there's like some tipping point where they start spending a lot more money to get the output to a certain level.
Right.
And so at that point, like they instead they just have these rolling blackouts and brownouts and stuff, and they just say, sorry, we don't have enough electricity.
Well, what they also do,
because they're not willing to give up the money, but they end up killing fucking elderly people that don't have AC that work, and all kind, because their AC turns off and they like boil in their houses, and
right,
like there's all kinds of bad shit that happens, and I'm like, why?
I mean, even for us, like, we don't make a ton of money, and we don't have central air. And what happened to our electricity bill for just running ceiling fans?
It doubled. They
say charge more during high demand times of year.
Yeah, it's fucking bullshit, dude. And
and whatever, like, what else goes into your house? Like, we have natural gas and we have water here at our house.
Yeah, I think it should be electric, our water heater. And
I mean, our house is from the 1930s, so it's like it's a retrofit at this point.
So
but
the government would have to pay for the changeover, I think,
right,
which would be fine.
Yeah, but like,
natural gas. So you got to have heat. You got to have some sort of way of cooling yourself if it's really, really hot.
Right.
You got to have food.
Right.
You got to have water, and all those things are privately sold.
Well, I mean, but at least the two utilities, like, natural gas and water, is through the city. It's not.
Oh,
like,
yours is through the city.
Through the city, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Is yours not?
No.
Oh shit.
Oh.
I did not know that.
No. I think it's more of an LA thing that you have like PG, or like you have whatever the LA Power, Water and Power Authority or whatever. Mm-hmm. We don't have that out here. So
holy shit! Is it like what company is it?
Southern California Edison. It's just
no fuck. They do your water and power too.
Wow.
No, they do my power. My water is a local water district called the Monte Vista Water District.
Okay.
But it's also it's privately run and
Jesus,
and whatever. So, and they have these crazy ways of doing their bills that don't account for all kinds of like we have this huge yard, but we rent, right? So it's not like we have this huge grass yard that our dogs and our child get to play in and stuff, and but we rent here. So people have said like, oh, you should just put the the artificial grass back there so you don't have to water it or whatever. I'm like, It's not my house, man. You know how much
Yeah.
money it would cost to do a yard that big in that artificial grass stuff?
Yeah,
It would cost a ton of money.
Not to mention,
Wow.
I mean, like, so you'd like that stuff where you live, where it gets super hot, gets
Yeah.
scalding hot. I mean,
Yeah.
Daphne wouldn't be able to walk
Oh
on it
yeah,
barefoot.
no, for sure, exactly.
Yeah.
You'd have to have a cover over the top of it to keep it.
Yeah.
Which then we're
from
just
being-
more money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, you know, so you know, we have to water the lawn to keep it alive and everything else. And I've done all I could. I've like got a, you know, smart water thing that like, you know, judges your weather and cuts back when it's cooler or when it's raining, which is never, and you know, all this sort of stuff. But even then, like I've had a couple water leaks where like, you know, a plant root got into like a sprinkler valve and like, you know, and I don't notice it for a couple weeks. And next thing I know, I've got like, you know, all mud and, you know, the whole front yard or whatever. And then like I get this bill and there's like 3 tiers on my water bill. It's like, you know, efficient use, and then like, you know, excessive use, and then like, you know, this crazy, whatever they call it, like, you know, you're a complete asshole use at the other end. And the third one costs way more money than like it costs more than the first 2 combined would, right? And it's like a punishment they're trying to do to you or whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm just sitting here like, well, I don't know where they get the baseline for like what the efficient use is, because are they judging that off of a house with a huge ass lawn in the back that it has to be watered to stay alive? Because, you know, that's what I have. And on top of that, a lot of people over the, you know, the last drought were like, oh, you know, we should really have, you know, no grass or whatever, because we got to cut back. And I had read an article that showed that like if every household cut back like the amount that they were saying, it would make a difference in total usage of like 4%.
Right.
Wow.
Because most of the money or most of the water is going to agriculture.
Right.
And they get it all for fucking free. Most of them have these like lifetime contracts with the state of California, and they take all this well water and groundwater and they just take it for free. Nestle gets water for free from California too.
And they own a lot of the private water as well, which is terrifying.
Yeah. So like I'm just sitting there going, you know, by the way, private water, that shouldn't be a thing unless it's like your
No.
swimming pool in your
Yeah,
backyard.
exactly.
Like
No.
there shouldn't be such a thing as private water. Like
No.
that's fucking crazy.
It's
But-
it's a terrifying prospect. Yeah.
But because like, again, requirement. All life on this planet, as far as I'm aware, requires water to live.
Yes.
You know, so like that's literally given some, like it's giving an oligarch, some rich son of a bitch who's probably a sociopath, because most rich people are,
Yes.
the ability to just kill as many human beings as he wants.
And
You know?
again, like not to mention, and is like California, we get most of our water actually that goes to us from Colorado. So most of the private water that's owned by Nestle goes to their bottled water and all the other stupid shit they do.
Yeah.
And so like most of our, I remember because when I lived in Colorado, that was a huge point of contention, is like so much of our water from the Colorado River Basin was going to California. And they're like, why? Fucking why? It's because they have a massive contract with California or
Right.
Colorado to do this.
And not for nothing, I don't know the exact number, but the California agriculture feeds Colorado and everybody else. Like, you know, like it's a big deal. Like I think there's more farming, like more food in this state than anywhere else that
true.
feeds the country. So and
It's-
the world as
and
large.
like a diversity of agriculture as well. Like, you know, like
Yeah.
these like monocrop, monoculture crop states, like, you know, that's only
Kansas.
Kansas. I mean, corn's only going to go so far, you know, so it's that kind of thing. But
yeah. So that's a big thing. So I just always look at it like I get these water bills and I'm just like, dude,
yeah,
you know. And so like one time we had this huge leak, I had to like document it, send them this stuff, and then they were gonna like refund me. But then ultimately it only brought me down into like the middle of the pricing tier thing, so they only refunded me like a few bucks.
Yeah.
But I'm like, where do you even put like, how do these tiers even work? Because I promise you, I'm not like bathing, you know, every day. Like I'm not just pouring water over myself like a constant shower. Like we water our lawns. Our daughter gets a bath every other night.
right,
We clean our dishes. You know,
yeah,
we wash our car occasionally, like every few weeks,
Right.
but we do that ourselves. But like, this is not like, we're not some gluttons for water, but we end up paying fucking hundreds of dollars.
and it
Like
matters.
we're billed every couple months. I think it's bi-monthly, and it costs us like $450 every couple months.
Wow.
God. And that's totally based on and this, and what's so funny is like that it gets back to that concept of how expensive it is to be poor. It's like this doesn't affect people who make the money that they don't have to care about it, and like probably are the largest consumers of electricity, water, and gas. Because it's like, well, who gives a shit? This is like a drop in the bucket, no pun intended.
Yeah, and I never back when they were telling us all to cut back, I never cut back because I was like, if you're not going to cut back the agriculture people, and it's not really most of them, but the ones that piss me off are the almond farmers.
Yeah. So it's thirsty fucking crop for such a low yield. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and it's just like, come on, man. And most of that, even like from what I read, like more than half of the almonds they make go into other uses anyway. It doesn't even go to like eating. Mm-hmm. It's not food. It's like makeup and shit like that.
Wow.
So I'm like, what are we doing? Like, why are these people doing? And I talked with one of those guys. I met one of them at one of my events, and he was like, oh, I just wanted to see what's going on. I heard you run. And I go, what do you do? He's like, I'm an almond farmer, and I about like stared daggers through him. I'm like, and he told me it's like third generation. So like, it's this familiar generational wealth that like just keeps coming through and whatever. And I'm like, can't you grow it anywhere else?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, no, not really, because you need like an arid climate, but it can't get below a certain temperature, and it's got to be above a certain or below a certain altitude. And I'm just like, then we do without almonds. Like, is that a big deal? Because like, is there some essential use for almonds that we have to have almonds?
No,
for like it just seems nuts.
Import them or something. But it's like
But I immediately said Colorado would probably work for you, like the lower elevations in Colorado.
It probably.
He's like, but then we'd have to. He goes, then the trees take like 3 years before they even make any whatever. And I'm just like, so you don't actually like. It's not really about finding a place, right? It's just that you don't want to move.
And like with like I'm a fan of almonds, but as like a I wouldn't mind it being a luxury item. You know what I mean?
Have you ever milked one?
I just grab it by its little almond teats and just
it's like.
You ever milked a cat, fucker? So since we're kind of on local politics, I wanted to get Caitlyn 2022 or Caitlyn Jenner for governor. What's your thoughts?
She lost me when she tweeted about Gavin Newsom letting all the murderers out. I was like, okay, we're done. Because like, she's married to a woman who has all her money from being married to a guy who got O.J. Simpson off for murder.
Yes.
Yeah.
Plus, she murdered somebody.
Yes.
Yes.
She certainly did.
So I'm like, maybe this is the wrong tact to take. Here, white lady. She turned into a white lady though. She's like a total Karen now.
Yeah,
she's like
white lady,
like an Orange County mom. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. I think she is so funny, like so much so that I actually want her to win, and let me tell you why. Because I don't think that anything that she would do, like, so what I like about her is that Newsom goes, he does that stupid politician talk, like, folks are really struggling out here. We got to take care of folks. The thumb thing.
Hey, we're gonna take care of everybody.
Yeah.
That's the Clinton thing. He's the first one that did the thumb.
Because pointing's too aggressive. And what I like about Caitlyn Jenner is the first interview she gets about her governorship, she goes, I don't want my neighbor and his hangar to move away. I mean, where are they going to keep our private planes? Taxes are too high. And I'm like, yep, this is the kind of clown show that California needs. Like, this is exactly it. And I also love that she's trans, but not the right kind of trans for liberals. And it's
why? Why is she not the right kind of trans?
Because she doesn't have the right politics. Because it never was about being trans they cared about. It's about being a liberal trans person. That's what they care about. It's not about human rights. It's about clothing. It's fashion. It's fashionable to care about trans people, but if they're not the wrong kind of trans, which she is, she's a problematic trans person.
That's the same argument I always have with the K-Hive types that are like, you need to listen to black people, and I'm like, I do. Number one. But number two, which ones?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, is it Candace Owens? Am I supposed to like? Because if you like, I'll listen to her. I don't know that I'll like it necessarily, but if that makes a difference to you, maybe I'll give her a shot. Or is it the Condoleezza Rice? Should I really be worried about her take on the wars and what's going on?
Right. How about Nick Cannon?
Nick Cannon. I love his new tattoos and stuff, and I really like the Masked Singer.
He's got a great. He's really got a great outlook.
He's like a Hotep guy now. He's like totally a black Hotep. Israelite. Yeah, it's tight. I love it.
Oh, is he? He's a black Israelite.
Yeah. He's like we were Egyptians and we are stronger because we're melanated kind of thing.
I think that's the same as the like those militant Black Panther people down in the South that's like the same thing.
And it's basically
that's
just
gnarly.
like
I like those guys though.
No, I know. I mean, like to me, it's so benign that it just becomes sort of funny because Beethoven was black and you're like no, like they just kind of like they claim every person who had like
But at the same time, on the other side, you have people complaining because they might make James Bond. I don't know if they did or not because I don't follow James Bond, but they might like Idris Elba was going to play him or something like that. So they're like, oh, James Bond's going to be black. How can that be? And I'm like, he's not real, right?
No,
you know that James Bond didn't exist. Like he's not like an actual person,
right?
He could be whatever the fuck you want him to be. He could be a woman. He could be like what the fuck's the difference?
Yeah,
it's a fake person.
The only exception that I made was like there was a push to make him like a woman, and I'm like, well, then that changes the entire concept of the character. It's like I wouldn't have cared at all if it was Idris Elba, but like
that's true because any chick can get laid all the time,
right?
She could just walk in and be like, "Hey, who wants some?" And then dudes would just be like, "Oh my god, it's my opportunity."
Exactly.
Like the whole thing about James Bond was that he was able to seduce all these women, and like that's what makes him seem so whatever man.
And also like too, what I liked, I mean, they made him more complex because in Ian Fleming books he was like a total fucking drunk and a piece of shit, and like so there's like his womanizing wasn't. Really
I probably
glamorous.
like that guy.
Yeah, he's a fun fucking complicated character, but yeah, that was always funny to me. But the Black Israelite thing.
So he was more like Archer.
Yes,
like the original.
Archer's actually a great. That's actually pretty much exactly what it was. Like total reckless.
I love Archer.
It's one of my
the first
favorite shows
seasons
of all time. Yeah, it got a little strange there at the end, but and I'm also such a Jessica Walter fan. Rest in peace. That she was the best. Perfect encapsulation of Republican women. But so I don't know. I just would find the whole prospect so fucking hilarious. She doesn't stand a chance, but
I don't think it really matters. Like Gavin Newsom's a piece of shit, so like whatever. I don't really care. The thing that bothers me is that like he's ripe for the picking, Gavin Newsom, right now. It's just that we got this clown show where like all these people jump into this race, and probably he's going to win again.
Yeah, I think he will too.
And it's just like. Like there's like 100 candidates in it now, and it's I mean it's democracy gone amok. But like Gavin Newsom's a shitbag. Like he shouldn't be. Like he vetoed. The reason why I signed the paperwork to recall him in the first place was that he vetoed ranked choice voting a couple years ago.
Yep.
Yeah,
like 3 years ago or something.
Because it threatened his power.
Yeah. So I'm just like fuck this guy. Like. I didn't like him to start with. We went through that before the Joe Isuzu thing.
Yeah.
But also the ranked choice voter thing. I'm just like, he has no interest in doing what we need at any point. So, I just wish there was like one good somebody that would go up against him that could fund it or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, like what sucks is the recall people got behind that John Cox doofus, and so it's like, well,
Yeah, I'm not related to that asshole, by the way.
He's the wrong Cox.
No, he's the worst Cox.
Yes.
Like I wouldn't even let him use any of my logos or nothing. Like the guy's a shitbag. But I do think it's really funny that he my mom had to explain this to me actually. I didn't even understand it at first. But apparently he calls himself the Beast, right? Which looking at him like there's no part of looking at that guy where I'm like, man, I'm kind of afraid of him. Like he would really, but apparently he does that because he is called Gavin Newsom the beauty, right? Because he's just like this, whatever. I don't know.
He's like
is Gavin Newsom attractive?
Objectively, yes. I mean, yeah, and it still is surprisingly, but because like I always say that he's a sexy haircut out of Central Casting. I mean, like he's not a real politician because like I like over the years of knowing who he is and keep in mind like being gay. I do give him a lot of credit, like for pushing for gay rights, like way before anybody else did. I mean, like when he was in San Francisco before he became mayor, like he was a pretty good force for good progressive issues. Like I have to give him credit at least for that, at least for the gay issue. I mean, he was very focused on it.
Well, but if you're in San Francisco,
it's popular to do that, sure.
Yeah. So you're actually just doing what's best for your political career.
But as somebody that I knew even then had aspirations for national politics, it was still kind of a risky move. And this is like back in 2004. Like, I mean, this is a long time ago. When he was still married to Guilfoyle, which is also hilarious.
Wait, what?
He was married to Kimberly Guilfoyle. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then he cheated on her with his best friend's wife, and then I think now they're married. I might have the timeline mixed up a little bit, but he was married to Kimberly Guilfoyle. Yeah.
That's a really shitty person, by the way, that does all those things like in a row.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's and so
Like, that's a mark. Like, you could do one of those things and just have a bad, like, oh, this was a real bad thing that I did, and
yeah.
But to do those things in sequences, like that's
It really it's
bad
incredible.
person.
It's incredible. But just the central casting thing, it's like, or Joe Azuzu, it's like 10 years of 15 to 10 years of like this downtrodden group, this, and that, and then nothing ever happened. It was so much talk, and also,
but he feels your pain, though. That's the thing about it. That's the most important part.
Yeah,
is that the politicians sympathize with you.
Yeah,
that's it. But see, if the politicians actually fix the problems, then you wouldn't. They wouldn't be able to sympathize with you anymore.
well, exactly, because like at the end of the day, he's a debutante wine merchant, So it's like right. there's just no helping there. But to me, it's like just for the clown show of everything, Caitlyn Jenner would be really funny to me.
Yeah, that'd be fine. I don't honestly really care, but I just don't want him in there. But he's probably gonna stay.
Yeah, the second he started to turn into Oprah, I'm like, oh, he's going to like.
You get a car. You get a car.
You know what I mean? Yeah, you get a check. It was funny. There was a picture when he decided on June 15th to reopen everything and make it some grand announcement that was so also very Hollywood and funny. There's this image I love. It's like one of those images of the end of the world where he's like standing. He's at Universal Studios. He's standing behind a row of those minions, and he's like looking up at the sky. And then there's like these two sad Latina women holding the $50,000 checks, like everything you destroyed everything, but okay, thank you. And like it just became, and he's just like, wow,
yeah.
If it wasn't for me, where would everybody be?
Yeah, exactly.
These underpaid people in these minion costumes would not have a job.
It's like I saw this
wage.
video. I saw a video of AOC and Ayanna Pressley or somebody. I don't know who the second person was because I only caught a small clip of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it was at a climate rally, and they're like jumping together, and like everybody's around them, like yelling, and they're all holding signs. And I'm like, it's just like a fucking narcissist to show up to a climate rally and make that about you too.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, come on, man. This is about the planet. It's not about your, small-minded little bullshit.
Well, exactly. and that's the thing. It's like I think in the age of social media, and she's a social media politician, like probably one of the first aggressive social media politicians. Well, Obama was too, but like, I mean, just in terms of it escalating to the level it is now, integrity is just dead. It's like, so just going and doing something good without it being documented. If you go to a homeless shelter and make soup and you put it on Instagram, well, then you've now lost the good deed. It doesn't exist anymore.
That's right. And you know what? I wish more people understood this. There's an episode of Letterkenny that touches on this. If you guys should watch Letterkenny if you don't. But where he's talking about they're having this Squirrely Dan is one of the characters, and they're having this conversation about doing a good deed for other people. And the main character Wayne, he was like, well, just go do a good thing, and then the reward is how you feel after you did it, right? And they're like, well, if nobody knows about it, then what's the point? Like, why would you even do it in the first place? And he's just like, well, but that's the same logic. What he points out is, and it's true, and I've known this for a long time, like understood it for a long time, which is that the moment you want something for yourself, it's not charity anymore.
Right.
It's that simple, which is why cops can't be heroes, right? While they're on duty. Mm-hmm. Like, you can't be a hero if you're a cop because that's your job.
Right.
That's the position you put yourself in. You volunteered. You're getting paid for it. Sorry. Mm-hmm. The heroes are the people that do it that don't get anything in return.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how few people like that there actually are, which is,
it hurts me as a politician too, because I get opportunities sometimes. And I turn them down, like to go to grandstand at a certain thing. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Today I would have gone to one today. There was one today that I would have gone to. There was a free, to free Julian Assange. It was in LA, but I didn't get the invite till yesterday. So it just didn't work out. But like otherwise, like most of the time, like it's always these sorts of, like they want somebody who's a politician or whatever that they can say is speaking, and then they could have them come speak. But it doesn't necessarily, like, if I don't feel like I'm bringing something to the table that's necessary for the event, then I don't really want to go. I mean, I might go as an attendee, but I'm not gonna, I don't want to be like a person up being, talking to other people from a microphone or whatever.
Yeah, that's a very unusual quality for a politician. And why?
Well, because I'm not a fucking narcissist. That's the thing. That's the thing we always get. I've been saying this on podcast after podcast, but like that's the whole problem is we elect people who only care about getting the approval of other people.
Yes.
And that's where they get their own value, their own self-worth is from other people.
Yeah.
And that's a narcissist. And so, when those people go to DC, even if they had good intentions when they got elected, when they go to DC, all they do is turn around and want the approval of those motherfuckers, the people in DC who are pieces of shit. Right. Mm-hmm. And so when you're seeking their approval, which is natural for a narcissist to do because they don't care, they just want to fit in. They want to have people like them. So, that's what we said. The people who are the best at running for office are narcissists. They're the ones that are best at winning offices, but they're the worst at actually being in office. You don't want those people to actually go to DC to fight for what we need. Mm-hmm. It's just like, it's a real weird, sort of dichotomy we have with that kind of, it's fucking everything up because we keep electing the wrong people. Right. We just keep doing it.
Right. Yeah, and I think we all sort of have like narcissistic tendencies, but it's very seldom people recognize them and cut it out.
Yeah.
And so, or at least like just at very least like have awareness. But now with COVID coming down to or winding down to whatever degree that it is, which is it's hard to get any accurate information on that. What is the next, other than your TV ads that you're working on? What is the next plan for your campaign?
Well, I am going to a rally. I think if it's still held. And for Medicare for All in LA, I'll be speaking at it on the 28th of July. So that's one where I know that I can make a really good point, and that I can add something, that I know that not a lot of people are saying at these types of events. Yeah. And I hope it's on video because it's going to be a good one because I already wrote my speech. So I'm gonna make sure somebody films it so that it can go out more than just the 1,000 or 2,000 people that'll be there probably.
Yeah.
But outside of that, honestly, I'm gonna get these ads up and running, the new videos and stuff. But I need to bring in money. Until I bring in money, I don't really. There's not a lot I can do.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of plans once I have money.
Mm-hmm.
But I need the money.
Yeah.
And what sucks is I had. Before this campaign started, I almost quit and didn't run and whatever. I told you about that before.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
But part of what kept me going and made me want to actually do this was that I had two different fundraising things lined up that were like gonna go, like it was gonna work out well. One was this person who I had gone on her podcast before, and then she just decided she wanted to help me or whatever, and she's helped other political campaigns in her home state of Colorado and. So she had this friend supposedly that was going to create a fundraising app or whatever that was going to help fundraise for the campaign and whatever that was going to be a game changer. And she had made all these promises. And the problem is I get a lot of people give me a lot of promises about shit that they're going to do to help the campaign. Like there's a lot of people that come around talking about, oh man, I could do this, I could do that. I really want to help. But in the end, like, goddamn, 9 out of 10 times they don't follow through, Mm-hmm. So it just kind of leaves me hanging here. And so that person didn't follow through. And then also the organization that I had signed a contract with, what were they called? Grassroots Fundraising. Those people canceled my contract because I was criticizing Democrats for the not giving us $2,000 checks that they promised.
Wow.
And so they canceled the contract before I even got my onboarding. If I would have just got that one contract, I would be funded right now. Mm-hmm. Because they had all the donor data that I need to be able to call people to raise the money. That's the trick is the money. It costs money to get the data to call the people to raise money. So, essentially if I don't raise enough money to start getting those call lists and actually paying for them and stuff like that, then this campaign will probably die just like the rest of them. So I just need to get enough money coming in. Like I need to raise like 10 grand, and it's super frustrating to watch the left, which supposedly is where I land too. Everybody's talking about how they're over electoral politics and stuff now because Biden and all this other stuff, and I'm like, hey, how's it going?
Right.
Like, all these people put all this money into all these Democrat shitheads, and then when the Democrats predictably do what Democrats do by screwing everybody over, now they don't want to donate to politicians. I'm like, okay,
yeah.
That sucks for me, I guess. But
well, and it's like, and again too, it's like I think that everyone thinks that they have some big sort of sway in national politics, and then when national politics goes the way they want or they don't, then they just stop participating in politics altogether. But on a local level is where you can actually make differences in certain places, and like. In independent in California, ranting and raving about things that you care about is a pretty powerful voice to have in Congress.
Yeah, for sure it is. And knowing that, the plan is to expand that, to bring in more independence and stuff, because that's ultimately how you bring accountability to Congress is you start firing them. And by them, I mean both parties, because the parties are owned by essentially the same people.
Yes.
So, until you can kick them both out, you're not really going to change a goddamn thing.
No.
And so we need to do that. We need to start kicking them both out. But if I don't get enough money to either, to actually get the list and to pay the expenses that it takes, that's part of the problem of being a regular guy like anybody else, is that I don't have a bunch of money just sitting here that I can throw in. And if I did, I might not use it, especially at this point.
Sure.
Because like, I'm looking at raising a daughter now, and with all the uncertainty of our economy and everything else, it's like if I had money, I probably would just disappear.
Yeah.
Like if I had a lot of money, I would just disappear probably and have my kid with me, and we would just figure out a way to live somewhere else.
Sure. Yeah.
But so no, I'm just saying so I need to raise money. That's really the big thing. So until that happens, I don't really have a lot of plans because everything I need to do costs money.
Well, I think, yeah. And well, we have your link down below in the description, voteforcox.com. And then, honestly, man, you're a photographer, I know. So you also have friends that probably work in videography. You should go film it and slickly edit it. And you know what I mean? I think that the best thing would just be just that event's coming up, something to do. And then just sort of think about the next event and just ways you can kind of do this. And then I think that sort of thing is how money will start to come in.
Well,
in the way that you need it.
We'll see. But I think these videos, honestly, when they come out, it should do something. It should move some sort of a needle.
Yeah.
And so that should be within a month or two, and hopefully. And by the way, Sean, Jordan volunteered you. I was talking to him, so I hope you're okay with that.
To do what?
To be an actor in some of my videos, or at least one of my videos.
No problem.
Yeah,
but you're gonna have to play a straight guy. So is that all right? Can you play a straight guy?
If Jordan's okay with me doing my method acting, I'm gonna have to sleep with a few women.
I have to be celibate for a month.
I know women. I could probably line a couple up for you.
I'm not going to spoil the video idea because it's great, but I'll tell you about it. It's really good.
Yeah, tell me about it later.
Yeah.
And then when we're done here, I want to tell you about the speech, because I don't want to give that away either.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
I want to tell you guys ahead of time about the speech I'm going to give at the Medicare for All rally in LA on the 28th. It's gonna be something.
Oh, man,
awesome!
I can't wait. All right, well, we'll let you go. It's Real Steve Cox on Twitter, and then voteforcox.com.
Yep, Real Steve Cox on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and then voteforcox.com. But if people can donate, even if it's just a couple bucks or $5, and just do it every month, that the monthly thing is working now, so you should be able to just do that, and that's really helpful. If I could just get a few thousand people to do that, we'd be fine. We would have the money we need.
Yeah, for sure. Well, cool, man. Well, thank you for coming on, and I'm gonna do our outro here, and then we'll see you in a second.
All right, see you. Thanks, guys.
Nowhere to run to, baby. Nowhere.